It is going to be a chilly night. Could be a touch of frost in some places. Still a bit milder though towards the south. Here it's actually going to be a bit of a damp start to the day, but further north, away from areas exposed to that northerly wind, it's largely dry across central southern Scotland with some bright sunshine, but elsewhere where we have that northerly wind, we are going to see some showers pushing through. Some showers across parts of Northern Ireland first thing, and down the eastern side of England as well. Elsewhere, many places across central northern England starting the day largely fine. A few showers for parts of Wales, and like I said, across the far south of England, a bit of a damp start. But that rain will clear away as we go through the day, and so for many, tomorrow is going to be a much drier, a much brighter day than of late. A few showers inland, but the showers will be most frequent around areas exposed to that northerly wind. And in that northerly wind, it is going to feel quite chilly. Temperatures dropping compared to how high they have been recently, 13 or 14 Celsius at best towards the south, and feeling a bit colder than that in that wind. More fine weather to come for many of us as we go through the end of the day, but still some showers in some places, particularly towards the far northwest of Scotland. A bit of a north-south split as we go towards the weekend. Always wettest towards the north. There could be some winteriness, some sleet or snow over the higher ground. Bye-bye.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
And good luck.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon to you. What an afternoon of politics we've got ahead. It's 3 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. Of course, we're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. In around 30 minutes' time, the final two Tory leadership candidates will be announced. Will they play it safe and go for centrist James Cleverly, or will they move to the right to try and eliminate the threat of Nigel Farage? Will any of it make any difference anyway? We'll have the results live and then full expert analysis from both Westminster and here back in the studio. And first, the Labour Party axed the winter fuel allowance. Next, Chancellor Rachel Reeves is eyeing up a £2 billion tax grab by lowering the tax-free cap on pensions withdrawals. Today's uncomfortable question is simply this: does the Labour Party hate pensioners? That's all coming up in your next hour. Welcome to the show. And 3 will become 2 in around about 30 minutes' time. Who do you want to be the future leader of the Conservative Party? Do you care? What does it mean for the political landscape? I'll be joined in the studio by Gawain Towler, the legendary Reform, Brexit Party and UKIP press guru, and also by Matthew Torbett from the Labour Party. What will this mean for both the Labour Party and Reform, and indeed the Conservatives? What will it do to your vote? Who do you want to be the leader? Let me know your views. The usual ways, gbnews.com/you're-safe. And that's your headlines. And here's Katie Bowen.
Martin, thank you very much. And a good afternoon to you. The time has just gone 3 o'clock. I'm Katie Bowen in the GB newsroom. Now, as you've been hearing, the final stages of the Tory leadership battle are getting closer, and we're expecting the results of the next round of voting imminently. James Cleverly, Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch all remain in the contest, as MPs have been voting this afternoon to select the final 2 contenders. Tom Tugendhat was eliminated during the latest round of voting yesterday, while James Cleverly came out on top with 39 votes. Once the final 2 candidates are selected this afternoon, voting will open for Conservative Party members in the online ballot tomorrow. We'll bring you those results very shortly. Elsewhere in politics, Sir Keir Starmer faced questions in the House of Commons this lunchtime as Prime Minister's questions returned. The leader of the opposition, Rishi Sunak, probed Sir Keir on whether tax rises were on the horizon in the upcoming budget. The Tory leader, in one of his last PMQs, questioned the Prime Minister on if a promise not to raise taxes in the Chancellor's budget applies to national insurance contributions from both employers and employees. Here's what the Prime Minister had to say.
We made an absolute commitment in relation to not raising tax on working people. He, of course, was the expert's expert on raising taxes. And what did we get in return for it? We got a broken economy, broken public services, and a £22 billion black hole in the economy. We're here to stabilise the economy, and we will do so.
Well, the Prime Minister also faced questions from the Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey about British fishermen in the Falklands amidst the controversial decision to hand the Chagos Islands back to Mauritius. Sir Keir said that the Falklands, which are personal to him, are British and they will remain British, as too will Gibraltar. To the US, the biggest hurricane in a century is hitting Florida today, with American President Joe Biden warning it's a matter of life and death for residents. If you're watching on television, these are live pictures we're bringing you from Fort Myers in the United States. Around 1 million people living in the path of Hurricane Milton are being evacuated, with concerns that lives are in danger. Others, choosing to stay put, have been securing their homes with sandbags and wooden boards. The US Weather Service has classified the storm to the highest rating, that's Category 5, with winds of 175 miles per hour expected. Flights between the UK and Florida have also been cancelled. North Yorkshire Police have issued an update this afternoon into the disappearance of Victoria Taylor, releasing a new CCTV photograph of the 34-year-old. A spokesman said that there was no information to suggest any form of third-party involvement in the missing persons case at this time, and that there is now a high likelihood that Victoria may have entered the River Derwent.
With any investigation, we are very open-minded and will continue to explore all lines of inquiry. Based on the discovery of Victoria's belongings so close to the water's edge, we must accept the significant possibility that Victoria has entered the River Derwent. Searches are currently underway, taking place in the river, and those searches have been taking place above and below the water surface.
And finally, Rebecca Vardy has been ordered to pay Colleen Rooney a further £100,000 following their high-profile Wagatha Christie libel battle. Mrs Vardy sued Mrs Rooney for the libel but lost the High Court legal action in 2022. Mrs Rooney had earlier accused Mrs Vardy of leaking her private information to the press, with Wednesday marking the 5th anniversary of the viral social media post at the heart of the dispute. Those are the latest headlines from the GB newsroom. I'm Katie Bowen. Now, let's go back to Martin.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Now, very shortly, we'll find out who will be the final two candidates to be the next Conservative Party leader. Will Tory MPs play it safe and go for the centrist James Cleverly? Will they keep Kemi Badenoch in the race, or will they move to the right in order to try and eliminate the threat of Reform's Nigel Farage and keep Robert Jenrick in the contest? Well, it's all to play for. And ahead of the announcement, we can now speak with GB News' political editor Chris Hope, who joins us live from the historic Westminster Hall. Chris, welcome to the show. So this morning, the bookies had James Cleverly nailed on. He was evens money to win the entire thing, let alone today. But there's been a lot of movement today, Chris Hope. The money is going towards Kemi Badenoch. Tell us more.
That's right. It feels, and welcome here again to historic Westminster Hall, that's seen a lot of drama over the past centuries. And a little bit of that drama will be played out today in Parliament when we find out which are the final two to go to the members. Those numbers overnight, to remind viewers and listeners, James Cleverly on 39 MPs backing him, Robert Jenrick 31, Kemi Badenoch 30. It does feel to me that Robert Jenrick's vote has declined through recently, and certainly over the past round when he fell back two MPs to 31, and Kemi Badenoch gained some. And in fact, today we've seen Ian Duncan-Smith come out for Kemi Badenoch. So it's interesting, I think, that you have got a feeling of momentum behind Kemi Badenoch for the final two. But no question, most people now think that James Cleverly is going to be in the final two. In fact, we heard from Robert Jenrick on GB News this morning. He said the arithmetic suggests that James Cleverly will be in the final. So his question for MPs was, who do they want alongside James Cleverly? Would it be Kemi Badenoch or him? It is genuinely hard to call this one. It feels as momentum with Kemi Badenoch, but last night those people close to Robert Jenrick were suggesting that some will come back from James Cleverly and go towards him, or indeed some being lent to Tom Tugendhat's support, even though he's knocked out yesterday. There could be a tie. There's a possibility of a 40-40-40 tie because 120 MPs are voting. Rishi Sunak, of course, the outgoing leader, is not voting. Were that to happen, the 22 committee yesterday agreed to keep voting until it ends. Not, as someone joked to me just now, a former aide to the Tom Tugendhat campaign, he said jokingly, if it's a 40-40-40 tie, Tom Tugendhat wins. Well, that's not going to happen. They're going to keep voting here until we get the final two to go forward to the membership.
Chris, we can't have a tie, we can't have a toss of the coin, we can't have a repeat of the Brexit nightmare. We need a result today, and I'm sure, Chris Hope, for all the drama aside, we're going to get one. And then the big question, Chris, as we've been talking about for many, many weeks, is the party itself faces that fork in the road. Does it stick with the establishment choice, James Cleverly, the safer of the two pair of hands, or does it take a gamble on a more right-wing, a potentially more populist candidate that might take the party in the direction of where the members want? And what do you think will happen? It's almost certain we're going to get Cleverly. He's 16-1 on to get through today. He's nailed on. Barring a lightning strike, James Cleverly is through. So it's going to be Cleverly versus one of the two right-wingers. And then, Chris Hope, the party has got a big choice to make.
Yes, a huge choice. I think the MPs, if you take a step back, Martin, have done their job here. They're offering a left of centre candidate and a right of centre candidate in James Cleverly and Kemi Badenoch or Robert Jenrick. That's what the MPs had to do to give the membership, 140,000 or so Tory members, the choice and which way to go and make that choice, that fork in the road, as you describe it. There's 4.1 million people who voted for Reform UK Party. Probably three-quarters of them were Tories. How to pull them back? Now, James Cleverly thinks just being bold and firm and staying firm as a Tory will just draw them back as the unelectability in terms of forming a government of Reform UK becomes clear. Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick will also go towards reform and try and attract those voters in a more aggressive fashion. Whether that works, I don't know. And the question is, how much trouble do you think the Tory party is in? They're down to 121 MPs. Is that the floor? Or is there more to fall? In which case, James Cleverly is somebody who could restore the party in one term, but would he have it in him to try and overhaul the party over 10 years? Someone like Kemi Badenoch, as an engineer, she knows what she feels. She's someone who has made a big play for trying to reconstruct a new coalition to vote Tory. She could be the answer. So the real question for MPs, for me, with half an hour to go to the result, is how much trouble are they in?
Well, that's the question, and we'll be back to you in about 20 minutes' time, Chris Hope, for that historic result. Thank you very much. We're back soon to you, Chopper. Now joining me in the studio for analysis, the former Labour advisor Matthew Torbett and the former head of comms for Reform UK, Gawain Towler. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Gawain, I'm going to start with you. So that fork in the road. The Tory party has to make a choice. The members seem to want it to go more into the direction of reform, an actual conservative party. What do you think will happen today, and what opportunity does that represent for the Reform Party?
I think, as Chris has been saying, very strong likelihood is James is going to make his way through, Cleverly's going to make his way through. He's likeable, nice, he doesn't scare horses. Unless he pinches them. And in some ways, is that actually what the Tory party needs? They've had years of infighting, and they've had years of ghastliness. They've had years of terrifying the public, their grandmothers and any local neighbour. And having somebody like James, who is affable and decent and homely and friendly, perhaps as a sort of, they need to hug. They need a hug, and James can provide that sort of hug. And they might not be so ruddy toxic to the general public. Whereas if you look at Robert Jenrick, I don't think anybody actually believes this Damascene conversion to a sort of reform light that came out of the I remember the Newark by-election, and I believe I actually coined that nickname because I went to 2 hustings. I came away I could not think of a thing. I left the room and forgot everything he'd said. He looked like a Tory MP. He looked everything you expected from a Tory MP and has behaved his entire career as everything you expect from a Tory MP until that moment.
Suddenly he's a mini Nigel Farage.
And suddenly... Yes, but why go for the soft version, the one that you don't actually believe? At least Nigel has stuck by his convictions for years, despite the opprobrium of the country in many parts of the country. He has stuck with it, and I mean, we were often, obviously I worked with him many years, and we were often described as a populist party. Trust me, mate. We were an unpopulist party, a deeply unpopulist party, and stuck to our guns. And it's because plenty of people like to say the same about somebody like Thatcher, is they don't necessarily like her or like her views, but they trusted her to stick to them, and you knew where you stood with them. And there was a level of integrity and honesty there. And if we are all talking about integrity in politics, and we are, and all parties claim it, that complete volte-face does throw all sorts of questions up.
OK, Matthew, in terms of the landscape for the Labour Party, who would the Labour Party like to see most get in? Who'd be the easiest to take on out of, for example, Kemi Badenoch or James Cleverly?
I think Jenrick. I think precisely because of what Gawain's just outlined. I think Kemi would make the culture war aspects of politics very uncomfortable for Keir Starmer, who isn't very good on that sort of stuff anyway. And from Labour MPs I spoke to yesterday, they see James Cleverly as the most... the one that they should fear the most, the one that's got any sort of credibility in the public eye. And I think that might be the key thing, where the Conservative Party needs to not necessarily focus on its members, because having been through several election defeats as a Labour member, we probably chose the wrong Miliband brother in 2010, and we may have won an election otherwise. Labour members also thought Jeremy Corbyn might be the best option in 2015. It goes to show, and I've always thought, members don't always know best in political parties, and what you need to do, which is what I think Cleverly would probably do, is reach out to the whole country, because it's the country you need to win over, not the members at the end of the day.
But, Gawain, wouldn't that feel like history repeating itself? Haven't the Tory party for all these years, certainly since Brexit, tried to be all things to all voters? And the last election, for that precise reason, they were trounced.
Yes, they were, but in the case of Corbyn, he got, 1.5, 2 million more votes than Starmer? So he wasn't that unpopular in the country. In fact, he was significantly more popular than the current government. So I'm not sure if that argument actually works. You were just, I suppose, unlucky in that Boris at that point was hugely popular, unlucky in the fact that any threat of Starmer, Sturgeon, and that woman from Dumbarton, whose name I've forgotten, had a chance, yes, thank you, had the opportunity of forming a government. So the Brexit Party, as you will remember very well, stood down against the Tories and completely changed the game, wiped out the Lib Dems, put the Labour from an aggressive campaign to a defensive campaign and made the difference. So Corbyn was unlucky and Starmer was lucky in the people they were fighting.
Could I ask you, just in a name, who do you think the Reform Party would most like to win today?
Don't care. Really don't care. We have to deal with what happens. Whatever happens, we have to deal with it. I think Kemi, she's ideological, but I think she's brittle. She loses her temper. She annoys her colleagues like nobody's business. And as I said, generic, it doesn't feel authentic. And Cleverly is a great amorphous blob. He's nice, but I don't think he's ever going to inspire. But he could actually steady the ship. So I don't think it matters to us. We have to plough our own furrow, whatever we do. It doesn't matter, because it's going to be 4 years hence. And honestly, do you really think whoever wins this is necessarily going to lead the Tory party into the next government, next election? I'm not so sure. OK, gentlemen, thank you very much for now. And coming up imminently, we'll find out which of James Cleverly, Robert Jenrick or Kemi Badenoch will not make it to the final two of the Tory leadership contest. We'll bring you this live next. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Right, up and down the country, many parents are preparing or have indeed already sent their child off to university.
Indeed, but sometimes it can leave parents struggling to cope with the, quote, empty nest syndrome their child leaves behind. So joining us now to discuss how to cope with sending off your sprogs to university, or not so sprogs, is broadcaster and psychotherapist Lucy Beresford. Good morning, Lucy. Nice to see you this early. This is a real thing, isn't it? It's our colleague Paul Coitz, our sports expert, describes it as grief, sending your young adults off to uni and leaving the nest for the first time.
Yes, I think grief is the right word, because it's an ending. And it's not just an ending with your relationship with your child. It changes from here on in. But it also is very much about your identity. Your identity as a parent is weakening. You'll always be that child's parent, but you're not going to have the same involvement on a daily basis. And so you're left to think, OK, well, what does my life look like going forward? What's my relationship? If you're in a relationship with a partner, how is that going to change? And like all elements of grief, there's going to be a bit of a process. There's going to be that transition period where you adjust to your new life, just as your sprogs, as you call them, are adjusting to their new, exciting phase of their life.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 3:20 now, and around about 10 minutes' time, we'll get the live results of the final MP voting round of the Tory leadership contest. And ahead of this result, and ahead of that, we've got in the studio the former Labour advisor Matthew Talbot and the former head of communications for Reform, Gawain Towler. Gentlemen, welcome back to the show. What do you think is going to happen today? Let's start with you, Matthew. Who do you think? So Cleverly's nailed on. He's 16-1 on to get through, but it's also play for the right-wing candidate, either Badenoch or Jenrick. Who do you think is going to make the grade?
I think with today in mind, there will be some lending of votes, and I think it may be him. If he wants it how he wants it, be him and Jenrick, because I think he sees him as the weaker candidate. Many Tories have said the MPs are the most duplicitous sort of voters that they've ever known. And I imagine there'll be lots of lending votes from Tug and Harts yesterday. And actually, I think it'll be interesting. That means a little bit of, if it doesn't go his way, it'll be a little bit of history, because we're going to get the first black leader of a mainstream political party, which, you know, I think for all and sundry of how divided the country is, shows, something positive.
And it shows that the Labour Party still haven't been that good on diversity, despite all of the cap wearing. What do you think will happen today, Gawain?
And if it was Kemi, the first black woman, beat the Americans.
Yeah. So we've got some live pictures there. That is Committee Room 14. That is where the results will be announced. Around about 8 minutes' time, you can see they're filing in now. Of course, we'll cross live to that for that result as it happens. But until that time, Gawain, what do you think will happen today? Is there a scenario where there might be that horse trading to make sure Jenrick makes the final two so he won't get the membership? The members' favourite seems to be Kemi Badenoch. Will James Cleverly try and stop that?
I think that's entirely possible. I mean, as you were saying, the horse trading, they are maybe duplicitous, but I think the word they prefer to use is... I'm trying to remember. It's gone, but they like to see themselves the most sophisticated electorates in the world. I can't believe a single one of the 20 that voted for Tom Tugendhat is voting for Kemi Badenoch out of choice.
Yeah.
Out of a bent arm, perhaps, but certainly not out of choice.
Way too different.
And so they would naturally swing almost entirely to Cleverly, which allows Cleverly's campaign managers and team to have a bit of leeway of how they want to play it. So I think the person who comes second is the one that Cleverly wants to fight.
Right. And so
because of that ability to use their majority to suit their purposes.
So Team Cleverly could be saying to Team Tugendhat, right, so the 20 votes you got, stick them on Jenrick, so we keep Badenoch off the ticket, then you'll get your man.
But though I have heard noises out of the Jenrick team saying that they were not happy, and that was an hour ago. They were very unhappy with the way things were looking. So...
And that's because they may sense that horse trading is happening.
That momentum that Chris was talking about. But I think the horse trading aspect, as you say, they are sophisticated, they are duplicitous, and as I say, the power now lies in Cleverly's campaign managers.
And also explains why only 16 of Cleverly's backers have actually come out publicly. So you can get away with loaning quite a lot of votes if you wish to do so. And I think somebody actually said the last time that happened was Liz Truss in 2022. So it may well be the same outcome.
It's interesting how...
I think you should lose.
After the general election, the Conservative brand seemed so damaged. It seemed almost at a point it was irretrievably damaged. And yet, a poll out yesterday, astonishingly, has the Tories only 1 point behind the Labour Party. I guess that's because of Sir Keir Starmer, let's be frank, he's had a nightmare since he's become the Prime Minister. And so are the Tories hoping that they just need to be not as bad as Labour? And therefore, if Cleverly gets back in, as you said, to steady the ship, there's that possibility by just not being as bad as Labour, they might hang around and try and get in again.
Well, 2024 showed that's how you can potentially win an election. And I'd love to say I was surprised that the Tories are a point behind. I think that would suggest that, Keir Starmer was ever popular as a leader. He's never been popular as a leader. I think he had his sort of high tide mark during the Brexit era and trying to push for a second referendum with a certain group of people. But ultimately, he's not popular, and I always felt the Tories were 20 points behind, that Labour weren't 20 points ahead. So I think it doesn't surprise me, and I think what we will see, regardless of who wins, is Reform overtaking the Conservatives in the polls, and then actually, not long after, probably around Christmas time or the New Year, they'll overtake Labour as well, which will put more pressure on Labour to get their act together, I'd hope.
Gawain, do you think that there could be... Everyone looks to the local. The first wave of local elections after a general election is when the incumbent government usually get its backside kicked. this time around, expecting that to be with bells on.
My memory suggests that it's about 2 down the line. The first one, they're normally they're still on the honeymoon. The honeymoon is well and truly over, but they are normally on a honeymoon, so I'm not sure. It is the smallest of the various, and it is the counties, it's the Tory seats, it's the Tory-held councils, the remaining few Tory-held councils, the county councils, the big things like Lincolnshire and Somerset and things of this sort, which Wiltshire. Now, obviously, Lib Dems will be snapping at the heels, the Tories, but Labour, and it is not a strong set of council elections for Labour. And honestly, it's not. There are regions of the country for reform. You've got to look at Kent, you've got to look at Essex, you've got Lincolnshire, you've got to look at bits of Norfolk, Staffordshire, Derbyshire, places like this, where you can see reform putting in a damn good fight. And we should be picking, as long as we select the candidates, as long as we have the people, we should be putting up a good show. But I don't think this is going to be that much of a referendum on this government because it's not Labour areas. As I say, Wales and Scotland, that's where things become interesting in 2026.
Matthew, I think there have been 10 or 11 council or by-elections now. The Labour Party hasn't won a single one. In fact, it's been a dismal turn of affairs. Are you expecting there to be a punishing wave of defeats for Labour in May?
I think maybe because of the areas, not necessarily so. They might be able to get away with it, but I think there's so much yet to come that will, even if it's not Labour's fault, will be blamed. We're looking at a third of councils likely going bankrupt. There's almost certainly going to have to be another release of prisoners to free up some spaces. Thames Water, I'll be astounded if they don't go bust, and that'll be left on the government's plate. And that's before you get to things like donors and the budget no doubt being panned because Rachel Reeves thinks she can cut her way to growth, which doesn't make sound economics to me. So I would have thought so, and I think Gawaine's probably more right. The more interesting ones for the Labour Party will be ones in Scotland and Wales, which is more of a natural home for them.
And just to interrupt there, that's live pictures of Committee Room 14. We're expecting an announcement in just over 2 minutes' time. Matthew, on that point of Labour's unpopularity, could I ask you that question I mentioned at the top of the show about pensioners? The winter fuel allowance cut has been, by any reckoning, it's been a terribly unpopular decision, perhaps one that they may regret. October 30th, all eyes are on the budget announcements. The news today, a raid on pensioners, bringing down the pension cap. What's going on with the Labour Party and pensioners? Is it because pensioners don't vote for Labour? You don't care about them?
I don't know about not caring. I do think the cynic in me thinks that pensioners have money and the Labour Party needs money. Pensioners don't tend to vote Labour. Now, the people that do vote Labour, or is normally a safe voter base, is public sector workers. So it isn't a great surprise. I don't think it's very wise, because pensioners almost certainly always vote. But to take from Peter to pay Paul almost to shore up your votes for future elections, and I think that is potentially what it is.
OK, we've got a quick minute before we cut to Committee Room 14 there. Gawain, final word to you before we go for this announcement.
I think that you're right, that does look like Peter Pay Paul, it really does. But I think that is also, it's another danger, is if what one sees now in the under-25s, there's this assumption that the under-25s will always be left-wing, they'll always be green. No. And if we look across the continent, and we're beginning to see here, the TikTok generation are not Reform are overtaking the Greens in the under-25s. They've left the Tories well behind. And they're not close to Labour yet, but we're looking at you in a very interesting way.
And that's a similar political mood to what we've seen in France and in Germany and Austria,
we're 20 years
Italy,
behind
the Netherlands.
We're 20 years behind the continent on this, but it's definitely moving. And it's got to be. You mentioned various things which I think are very real, but immigration is still going to have an impact, even at local level, because in those councils which have had to have hostels, have to have places like this, these are big local issues. Though the winter fuel allowance. Last week, when Reform won its first county, district council borough election, or city council in the case of Blackpool, it was the winter fuel allowance on the doorstep. Absolutely. Talking to our campaign team up there, that was what made the big difference.
Very quickly before they come in, you know it's not an election winner because we've seen dozens of Labour councils bringing in their own version of the winter fuel allowance because they know they're going to get a kick in. And actually, regardless of economics, it's just not fair and it doesn't feel
It's not good politics.
No, I agree.
There we go. And there we go. Let's cross now live to the result of the next round of the Tory leadership contest. Here we go.
Right, thank you for that warm reception. As chairman of the 1922 committee and returning officer in the leadership contest, I can now give you the results of the fourth and final parliamentary ballot, which is good news for all of us in that respect. So 120 MPs voted, and I can report the numbers of votes for each candidate as follows. Kemi Badenoch, 42 votes. James Cleverly, 37 votes. And Robert Jenrick, 41 votes. So, as a result of that ballot, James Cleverly is eliminated from the contest, and Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick now go forward to the ballot of members. Thank you very much for your attendance.
Wow. Well, that was a result I don't think few people saw coming. The bookmakers certainly did not see that coming. Just to repeat, James Cleverly, who was the bookies' favourite, he was 16-1 on to make the final two this morning. He was odds on 1-1 to be the next leader, dramatically kicked out of the final three, scraping 37 votes together, only putting on from yesterday. He went actually from 30, what did he have yesterday? He went down. So 37 votes for Cleverly, 42 for Kemi Badenoch, who took the most votes. Robert Jenrick on 41 votes. That means we've got a head-to-head for the leadership contest of the two right-wing candidates. I don't think anybody saw that one coming, and Gawain Towland here threw his head back in exhaustion, in laughter. Nobody saw that coming whatsoever. Now we can speak with GB News political editor Chris Hope. Chris Hope. That was a result I think very few people saw coming. Everybody expected, as we said, there to be a centrist versus the right-winger. Instead, we've got a head-to-head between the two right-wing candidates. Chris, I can see you're astounded. Tell us your reaction.
I'm very rarely surprised in politics. I'm astounded by what has just happened, because literally no one thought that James Cleverly would go out at this round. He looked like he was going to hoover up the 20 spare votes from Tom Tugendhat. He's a moderate centre-left candidate. Instead, unbelievably, he's gone back by 2. Jenrick's gone ahead by 10. And Badenoch has won. Kemi Badenoch has won the Tory MP's vote, which no one saw coming. I don't know what's happened. I'm going to have to explain this to viewers and listeners at some point. We're going to get guests over here to explain. These Tory MPs, they are the most extraordinary electorate. I'm sure Gawain Towler's chuckling away in the studio at this, but no one saw Kemi Badenoch winning the vote after what was a difficult conference. No one saw Robert Jenrick coming through as second place. And now James Cleverly, who everyone thought was amassing votes, piling them up, ready to dispense them to work out who he wanted to face in the final two, he's out. It is extraordinary.
And Chris, maybe this got something to do with the fact last night there was an op-ed by Alison Pearson in the Telegraph, and it had thousands and thousands and thousands of comments. And she said this: if James Cleverly wins, I'm off to the Reform Party. Because basically it means the Conservative Party haven't listened to anything that anybody's said these past years about the Conservative Party actually being conservative. We need to go towards the right, and that means it must be Badenoch or Jenrick. I'm not saying that Alison Pearson has swayed this, but thousands and thousands and thousands of Conservatives seem to agree. You can't keep just putting the centrist candidate out, hope to please everybody, and have any chance of winning. And that's been acted upon, but everybody is flabbergasted at this, most of all you.
Yes, I mean, maybe Alison Pearson does have that influence. The Daily Telegraph, who she writes for, is, of course, the house paper of the Conservative Party. So it could well be the case that influenced MPs seeing that. I saw earlier today Ian Duncan-Smith declaring for Kemi Badenoch. That was why I felt that she had momentum. I do not understand how Robert Jenrick added 10 votes overnight, unless somehow there was some jiggery-pokery and people were lending votes to Tom Tugendhat and to Cleverly to lull the centre of the party into some form of support that it would be okay. To my left now has arrived Andrew Bowie, who is the spokesman for the Kemi Badenoch campaign. If you'll bear with me, Martin, I will ask him now what the hell just happened. Andrew Barry, welcome to GB News.
That's good to see you.
What on earth just happened?
Well, I mean, you tell me. What did happen, though, is quite clear. The members' favourite topped the ballot. Kemi won the votes of MPs, demonstrating that she has support from across the party, a majority of MPs backing her now. And we look forward to taking the arguments out to the membership and seeing how she gets on.
I know what just happened. I can read numbers, but how did it happen?
I mean, once again, your guess is as good as mine. I'm just delighted that 42 MPs saw fit to back Kemi Badenoch today. Quite clear she's the members' favourite. Quite clear she's who Keir Starmer fears most, and quite clear she's the only one with the plan to renew this party and take it into the next election.
This party is now lurching to the right, isn't it? The two centrist candidates have gone. It's a choice between a right-wing candidate and a second right-wing candidate.
No, I don't think that's true, but we need to become a Conservative party once again. I think there's a lot of people out there who don't really understand what the Conservative Party stood for in the last election. Some people accuse us of being too far to the left, other people accuse us of being too far to the right. Kemi's plan is to bring everybody together and develop a policy platform that will appeal to the majority of the British people. That's what she's going to do.
And just very finally, Kemi Badenoch was the one candidate who wanted to go to the full distance to the 2nd of November. There's no chance now of ending this early, is there?
I don't think so, purely because the mechanics are already set in process and the machinery is all set in train for a 2nd of November result, and I look forward to it.
Andrew Bowie there, spokesman for Kemi Badenoch, equally in the dark. I will come back with more intelligence later, Martin.
Well, we're going to try and make sense of this back in the studio. Also, a lot of just exasperation, laughter, gasping, the whole gamut. Thank you very much, Chris Hope. We'll come back for more soon. Lots more to come between now and 4 o'clock, of course, including all those reaction to the immensely shocking news that former Home Secretary James Cleverly has not made it into the final 2 of the Tory leadership contest.
Hello again. Here's your GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. For many of us, it has been a pretty wet few days, and we are actually going to see a lot of that rain, those showers easing as we go through the next 24 hours or so. We do still have low pressure nearby, and we are still seeing some rain for the next couple of hours, but a lot of that rain's pushing its way southwards and breaking up. Most of the showers will be easing and clearing away as well as we go through this evening, with some clearer skies developing, particularly across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and later Northern England overnight. All of that happening because we have a brisk northerly wind, and that could lead to some blustery conditions for some of us. In the north, where we get those clear skies, it is going to be a chilly night. Could be a touch of frost in some places. Still a bit milder, though, towards the south. Here, it's actually going to be a bit of a damp start to the day, but further north, away from areas exposed to that northerly wind, it's largely dry across central southern Scotland with some bright sunshine, but elsewhere where we have that northerly wind, we are going to see some showers pushing through. Some showers across parts of Northern Ireland first thing, and down the eastern side of England as well. Elsewhere, many places across central northern England starting the day largely fine. A few showers for parts of Wales, and like I said, across the far south of England, a bit of a damp start. But that rain will clear away as we go through the day, and so for many, tomorrow is going to be a much drier, a much brighter day than of late. A few showers inland, but the showers will be most frequent around areas exposed to that northerly wind. And in that northerly wind, it is going to feel quite chilly. Temperatures dropping compared to how high they have been recently, 13 or 14 Celsius at best towards the south, and feeling a bit colder than that in that wind. More fine weather to come for many of us as we go through the end of the day, but still some showers in some places, particularly towards the far northwest of Scotland. A bit of a north-south split as we go towards the weekend. Always wettest towards the north. There could be some winteriness, some sleet or snow over the higher ground. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Still flooding affecting the A1M in County Durham this afternoon. It remains closed between Bradbury at junction 60 and Aycliffe at 59. Still heavy back towards Bertree, junction 58. Warwickshire, there's emergency repairs on the southbound M6, so between the Corley services and the Nuneaton Coventry turn off junction 3. Lane 1 of 4's combed off, and that's what's causing those delays. Northbound M1 slow going at the Toddington services. There was a collision that's cleared, but still seeing delays between the Quedgley turning and the retail park in Gloucester. The A38 northbound blocked and slow, and Mayfair in London, the inbound side of Regent Street from Conduit Street through towards New Burlington Street is closed and queuing as a broken down bus there continues to be recovered. And for now, that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Welcome back. What a show already. It's 3:40. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now let's continue our reaction to the news that James Cleverly has been dramatically eliminated from the Tory leadership contest. A sharp intake of breath. And let's go back now to GB News political editor Chris Hope. Chris, have you calmed down a bit yet? Yes. When we spoke to you a moment ago, you were simply flabbergasted. Now you've got another guest. Let's try and make sense of this. Over to you.
I'm very, very surprised in politics. You can see most things coming. Labour's landslide looked pretty obvious in the polls from a few weeks out, but literally no one saw James Cleverly going out. Basically, as an MP told me a few moments ago, he was the effective leader of the opposition until 10 minutes ago, and now he's out. With me now is Danny Kruger, spokesman for the Robert Jenrick campaign. Danny Kruger, I'm going to ask the same question I asked Andrew Bowie. What on earth just happened?
I don't know. What did Andrew say?
He talked about the numbers, but what happened? How has it happened?
OK, listen, it's inexplicable to understand Conservative MPs. What I'm pleased about is that a lot of them voted for Robert Jenrick. We now have a race between two very good candidates. By the way, my commiserations to James Cleverly for what a good campaign. He's a great Conservative. We, as a party, are going to have to come together at the end of this. But now we've got Rob and Kemi. I mean, I think what happened is enough people decided that those were the right two to put to the membership. I think the members want one of those two, by the way, is my sense from my local association. I think people will be pleased with this outcome. We're going to have
But they're both from the right, though, aren't they? You've got two right-wing candidates for the base. How will that appeal to all of Britain at an election, which is broadly more centrist?
Well, actually, I think what they both stand for is change, and I think Robert stands for it best because he has a comprehensive plan for how to win back the voters that we lost, to reform on one side, to the Liberal Democrats and Labour on the other. So actually, I think we've now got a choice between two candidates, both promising to be the change candidate. I only think Rob is the genuine one in my view. And then whoever wins, we can then go to the country with a real commitment. We're going to deliver for them in the way that I'm afraid to say, despite a lot of good work we did in the last government, we didn't successfully do. We've got to rebuild our trust with the public, and that does mean changing ourselves.
It means shifting down a generation. These are younger. You don't have a much younger leader than Keir Starmer going to the next election. That's interesting. Certainly more to the right. You've got Robert Jenrick promising ECHR withdrawal, Kemi Badenoch promising a rewiring of the entire parliamentary party. Maybe this is the moment at which the party woke up to the state it's in. It needs to have some kind of radical surgery.
I think that's right. I think in 2019 we were elected on a mandate to change the country, and I think Kemi's right to talk about rewiring the state. Robert Jenrick makes the same point. Fundamentally, the British government doesn't work for the British people. And one element of that, by the way, is the ECHR. It's our entanglement in international legal frameworks we need to get out of. But there's more to do as well about reforming the public sector, getting the economy working properly, making Whitehall work, reducing the size of government so that it works better for the people. And I think we can go into the next election with a very coherent, proper plan for reform.
Just one final question. Can you explain how your candidate went backwards yesterday and then let forward 10 votes today to come second?
That's what happens in these races. We're talking about small numbers of MPs, sadly. We only have 120 people. And I'm afraid to say they move around during the race to decide who they want to put forward. I mean, these races are always difficult. I'm glad to say Robert picked up support consistently through the race. We started way behind. He's now emerged as one of the top two, and I'm very pleased about that. I think he's demonstrated his seriousness and his hard work and his commitment to a broad church that the Conservative Party is, while having a very coherent plan for the changes that we need.
Well, Danny Kruger there, again, with no real explanation. I shall bring you more intelligence on what on earth just happened. It's a surprising afternoon.
Chris Hope and Danny Kruger, thank you very much for that. And let's get back to the studio now to try and make some sense of it here. I'm still joined by the Labour advisor, former Labour advisor Matthew Torbit, and the former head of comms for Reform UK, Gawain Towler. Gents, well, they're all stunned. We're all stunned. Yesterday, Robert Jenrick, the wheels were coming off. Today, he's turbo boosted, 10 extra votes. He's come from nowhere. Cleverly was nailed on with the bookies, with the pundits, with everybody. He's dramatically out. The question now to you, Gawain, is there are a lot of MPs out there who won't agree with either of these two leaders' politics, the Remainer Tories, the Shire Tories, the wet Tories, as you may unfavourably call them. How will they react to having one of these two as their new leader?
I suppose one could call it the wet rump. Moving
swiftly onwards.
But the point is well made. Astonishingly, and the duplicity and the sophistication of this electorate is such that they may have actually woken up to the fact that nobody likes them anymore as a party. And if they wish to do anything at all, they have got to look at the country as it is and see where that mood is switching in those who are on the centre-right. And it is certainly switching into the area led by Farage. And you have the sort of... Even the Tories, if they want to keep their seats going forward, and there's no guarantee that they will, despite the attempts of the Labour Party to resuscitate them at every roadside, is that they went for them because... But the question is, do they believe in the future?
OK, Matthew, quickly before we head to a break, the future might be bright, but the future is on the right. How will that go down with the Labour Party?
I think, well, I've just had a text from a Labour MP who said, grab your passport, we're all going to have to leave the country if either of these two end up Prime Minister. So I think that it's safe to say the Labour Party are probably pleased at this. I think Cleverly probably was the biggest threat in the sense of trying to win over so-called sensibles. I think also we probably owe the viewers a bit of an apology. You promised them expert analysis at the top of the hour. We've totally called it all wrong.
Well, the bookies got it wrong. Everybody got it wrong. Everybody in Westminster is surprised. Thank you, gentlemen. Now, don't go anywhere. We'll have more reaction to the shock news that James Cleverly has been dramatically eliminated from the Tory leadership race. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, Georgia. Your story is incredible. Just remind us of it. You quit running in, was it 2017? Because I mean, to be quite frank, your body was knackered, you had injuries, you thought you couldn't go on anymore. But then you started running again at Parkrun in 2022. And of course, this summer at the Olympics, you won bronze.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah, it has been a bit of a journey. And yeah, there was a period of time where I stopped running completely. And then Parkrun was just something I got into with my friends, my family, just local community. And I started to see the improvements that led me to get back in contact with my old coach and just worked my way back up to elite level running and got a bronze medal this summer in Paris.
Did you ever think that would happen when you were beginning to take part in parkruns again? Did you ever think you'd be winning bronze in the 1500 metres at the Olympics?
No, not at all. It would have been absolutely bonkers, I think, to think that at the time. It was just building my way up, but it was all about finding happiness in running again. And that's really what Parkrun does, I think, really well.
And can you just tell us in the audience what had happened to you in 2017?
So I had been like a good junior athlete. I had gone over to the US on a track scholarship at university, and I just experienced so many different injuries. So various stress fractures in my shins, and I just graduated and just thought there's no way I can run anymore. So took a big break. And then, yeah, over the past few years, I just got back into running slowly, built it up, and Parkrun is just something that is on every Saturday. So many parks across the UK, very accessible, free. So it was just a really good way to get back into a fun but semi-level of competitive running.
The People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 4. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, joining me in the studio, I'm still with the former Labour advisor Matthew Talbot and the former head of comms for Reform UK, Gawain Towler, trying to make sense of what's just happened. Matthew, the bookies called it right, though. The bookies shifted dramatically this morning. They had Kemi as the favourite at 8 to 11, cleverly slipped 11 to 8. The bookies got it right, we got it wrong, the MPs got it wrong, all the so-called experts got it wrong. On to what this could mean for the Labour Party. You made an excellent point during the break about Kemi is very good at the dispatch box, and people remember and notice that.
Yeah, I think the general public who aren't political geeks like the rest of us and living for it will mostly normally see things like the news at 10 and Prime Minister's questions, and that'll be their sort of political insight. She is very effective at the dispatch box. Because she is a black woman and a very proud Conservative and very forthright in her views, it puts Labour on the back foot a bit, I think Labour have always been seen as a little bit condescending towards race and the sort of diversity sort of stuff. And I think the Tories are a lot better on race than what certainly historically used to be. And with that, it will put Keir Starmer in a very uncomfortable position on things like immigration, Black History Month, any sort of diversity stuff that's raised and that can be painted as sort of quote-unquote woke. She would be out of the two now that I think would cause a larger headache for Keir Starmer, and I think, whether it be for good reasons or bad, would show something different on offer compared to the fact that people sort of said that you couldn't get a cigarette paper in between Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer. So she's certainly going to offer something if she wins. I think Jenrick, it will remain to be seen. He doesn't strike me as that much of a threat at the moment.
Gawain, politicians, journalists, they like to make a big, song and dance about, she'll be the first black woman. Do the electorate care about any of that anymore, or they just want the best person for the job?
I honestly think that the vast, vast, vast majority of the people of this country really don't care. Can they do a good job? Really, we're past that. We really are. People said that in 1976 when Thatcher became leader of the Tory party before she won the general election. Are the Tories ready to vote for a woman? Well, yeah, they were, weren't they? And so, frankly, I don't think this is the issue that some people would like to make it. I do think that my concern for a Badenoch-led Tory party, and it's showing concern for a party I have no concern for, of course, is that she has, and I know plenty of Tory MPs that she has knifed in the back in the past. She may have support. The mathematics of having 40 being a majority of 120 being fascinating to me. But she having support, yeah, she has support there. But day to day, working with her all the time, knowing that she's going to leak, knowing she's going to brief against you, knowing she's going to stick you in the ribs, because she's been doing it before. We all know that. At the beginning of this campaign, the leaking of the meetings notes and all the rest of it. They may support her because she might do exactly what Matthew's been saying and be that difference and look different and be different and create clear blue water, as they say, between the two parties.
Matthew, final word to you this hour. So it could be the case that the Conservative Party have the first black woman leader, and that's rather an embarrassment for the diversity card players in the Labour Party.
Yeah, I've always said I don't know how much longer the Labour Party can call themselves the Progressive Party when the fact that, the Conservatives will have had 3 women Prime Ministers, they've had an Asian Prime Minister. We're getting ready to go potentially for the first black female and the 4th female regardless, and we're still electing posh men from London. So it's not a great look. And if they may get another, I think Cleverly will get a second bite of the cherry. I think if she goes during the locals, they have a bad locals in 2 years, they might have another one.
OK, superb stuff. Matthew Talbot, Gawain Taylor, thank you very much for our so-called expert analysis this hour. Now, plenty more reaction to the news that Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch will be the final 2 candidates in the Tory leadership contest. Who will the membership pick next? I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, here's your weather with Alex Burkill.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again. Here's your GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. For many of us, it has been a pretty wet few days, and we are actually going to see a lot of that rain, those showers easing as we go through the next 24 hours or so. We do still have low pressure nearby, and we are still seeing some rain for the next couple of hours, but a lot of that rain's pushing its way southwards and breaking up. Most of the showers will be easing and clearing away as well as we go through this evening, with some clearer skies developing, particularly across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and later Northern England overnight. All of that happening because we have a brisk northerly wind, and that could lead to some blustery conditions for some of us. In the north, where we get those clear skies, it is going to be a chilly night. Could be a touch of frost in some places. Still a bit milder, though, towards the south. Here, it's actually going to be a bit of a damp start to the day, but further north, away from areas exposed to that northerly wind, it's largely dry across central southern Scotland with some bright sunshine, but elsewhere where we have that northerly wind, we are going to see some showers pushing through. Some showers across parts of Northern Ireland first thing, and down the eastern side of England as well. Elsewhere, many places across central northern England starting the day largely fine. A few showers for parts of Wales, and like I said, across the far south of England, a bit of a damp start. But that rain will clear away as we go through the day, and so for many, tomorrow is going to be a much drier, a much brighter day than of late. A few showers inland, but the showers will be most frequent around areas exposed to that northerly wind. And in that northerly wind, it is going to feel quite chilly. Temperatures dropping compared to how high they have been recently, 13 or 14 Celsius at best towards the south, and feeling a bit colder than that in that wind. More fine weather to come for many of us as we go through the end of the day, but still some showers in some places, particularly towards the far northwest of Scotland. A bit of a north-south split as we go towards the weekend. Always wettest towards the north. There could be some winteriness, some sleet or snow over the higher ground. Bye-bye.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon. Hello, I'm Jules Buckley. Still some flooding affecting the A1M, closed in both directions between the Bradbury turn-off junction 60 and A Clifford 59 is tailing back to Bertree at junction 58. Queues for emergency repairs on the southbound M6. Lane 1's combed off between the Corley services and the Coventry turn-off junction 3. That's looking slow going. Delays in the clockwise M25 roadworks before South Mims 23. There was a breakdown there. That's cleared, but still some queues back towards St Albans at junction 22. A3 in New Malden in London closed between Coombe Lane and Shannon Corner, and queuing back towards Tolworth at the scene of a bump there. And the southbound M23 after Gatwick Airport junction 9. The inside lane remains combed off. A broken down car there being recovered.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. on a dramatic day in Westminster. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. A shock result in the Tory leadership contest.
Kemi Badenoch, 42 votes. James Cleverly, 37 votes. And Robert Jenrick, 41 votes.
Yes, former Home Secretary James Cleverly has been dramatically voted out and will not be the leader of the Conservative Party. Kemi Badenoch, who won today's round, will face off against Robert Jenrick in the final two, and the finalists will take part in a live exclusive event on October 17th, live here on GB News. And meanwhile, across the pond, millions of people in Florida are rushing to leave their homes as Hurricane Milton races towards the state's west coast. And this is what Florida Governor Ron DeSantis had to say a short while ago.
We are bracing and are prepared to receive a major hit.
Well, it's a show of pleasure to have your company. Well, they're expecting a major hit in Florida. Today, James Cleverly took a massive hit in Westminster. He was nailed on this morning, 16-1 on to make the final two. A late surge on Kemi Badenoch, and the rest is history. Kemi Badenoch, 42 votes, putting on +9 overnight. James Cleverly, 37. He lost 2 votes overnight. Robert Jenrick came from nowhere yesterday. We were saying the wheels were coming off his campaign. He put 10 votes on 41. That means the membership will now choose between Jenrick and Badenoch. That means there'll be a right-wing candidate, the leader of the Conservative Party, James Cleverly, the bookies' favourite until this morning, dramatically ousted from this race. What do you make of that? Send your views and post your comments by going to gbnews.com/your say. But now it's your headlines, and here's Katie Bowen.
Martin, thank you, and good afternoon. The time has just gone 4 o'clock. I'm Katie Bowen in the GB Newsroom. Now, as you've been hearing, breaking news this afternoon, Tory MPs have now selected the final 2 candidates in the Conservative leadership election, with Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick making it through to the members' vote. Kemi Badenoch received 42 votes, Robert Jenrick picked up 41, and James Cleverly received 37, meaning he has now been eliminated from the race. Cleverly has thanked his colleagues, party members and the public for the support he received during his campaign. Voting will open for Conservative Party members in an online ballot tomorrow, closing on October the 31st. Elsewhere in politics, Sir Keir Starmer faced questions in the House of Commons this lunchtime as Prime Minister's questions returned. The leader of the opposition, Rishi Sunak, probed Sir Keir on whether tax rises were on the horizon in the upcoming budget. The Tory leader, in one of his last PMQs, questioned the Prime Minister on if a promise not to raise taxes in the Chancellor's budget applies to national insurance contributions from both employers and employees. Here's what the Prime Minister had to say.
We made an absolute commitment in relation to not raising tax on working people. He, of course, was the expert's expert on raising taxes. And what did we get in return for it? We got a broken economy, broken public services, and a £22 billion black hole in the economy. We're here to stabilise the economy, and we will do so.
To the US, the biggest hurricane in a century is hitting Florida today, with American President Joe Biden warning it's a matter of life and death for residents. If you're watching on television, these are live pictures we're bringing you from Fort Myers in the United States. Around 1 million people living in the path of Hurricane Milton are being evacuated with concerns that lives are in danger. A few moments ago, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis held a press conference where he updated residents on the measures in place for their safety.
There is high confidence that this hurricane is going to pack a major punch and do an awful lot of damage. The state is actively fulfilling over 1,500 missions. We've delivered massive amounts of supplies, meals, water bottles, sandbags, tarps, generators to be able to help our local communities.
North Yorkshire Police have issued an update this afternoon into the disappearance of Victoria Taylor, releasing a new CCTV photograph of the 34-year-old. A spokesman said that there was no information to suggest any form of third-party involvement in the missing persons case, and that there is a high likelihood that Victoria may have entered the River Derwent.
With any investigation, we are very open-minded and will continue to explore all lines of inquiry. Based on the discovery of Victoria's belongings so close to the water's edge, we must accept the significant possibility that Victoria has entered the River Derwent. Searches are currently underway, taking place in the river, and those searches have been taking place above and below the water surface.
And finally, Rebecca Vardy has been ordered to pay Colleen Rooney a further £100,000 following their high-profile Wagatha Christie libel battle. Mrs Vardy sued Mrs Rooney for the libel, but lost the High Court legal action in 2022. Mrs Rooney had earlier accused Mrs Vardy of leaking her private information to the press, with Wednesday marking the 5th anniversary of the viral social media post at the heart of the dispute. Those are your latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Katie Bowen. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Katie. Wonderful stuff. Now, a shock result in the race to become the next leader of the Conservative Party. Former Home Secretary James Cleverly has been dramatically knocked out of the race to become the next leader of the Tories. And we can now speak with GB News' political editor, Chris Hope, who's still trying to make sense of it himself over there in Westminster Hall. Chris, a variety of guests you've spoken to from Team Jenrick, Team Badenoch. Danny Kruger, I thought, summed it up wonderfully. He said it's inexplicable to try to understand Tory MPs. Chris, try and help us to make sense of this.
Yeah, Martin, welcome back to the historic Westminster Hall. This place has seen some political drama in its centuries of existence, but I wager not as much a surprise as the removal of James Cleverly from the Tory leadership contest. Well, it feels that way anyway. I appreciate that it's maybe not the same as trying a king for treason or whatever it might be. But anyway, it's a big deal here. I'm with Andrew Griffiths now, who's a spokesman for the Kemi Badenoch campaign. Andrew, what has just happened?
Well, what's just happened is that Kemi has topped the Members of Parliament ballot, so Kemi's through to the members round. That's on top of having led all of the polls, independent polls of members throughout. So she's in a very strong position, I feel, for James and all of the excellent colleagues who put themselves forward in this contest. But we members of Parliament have now done our job. We've put forward two excellent candidates, which I think Kemi is the one that can really cut through.
Andrew, we know all that. Come on, it's you and me talking now. How on earth has Kemi Badenoch gone from 30 votes to 42 votes in one sitting? And how on earth has Robert Jenrick, who going backwards, now gone forwards by 10 votes? And how on earth has the leader gone out?
Well, Chris, you're far more versed in these ways than me. My view of life is you play what's in front of you, you manage what you can manage, and Kemi has put on votes in each round. So each time somebody else has left, Kemi's got more support. That's what we've seen again today, topping the ballot, on top of topping the ballot of members. So we've had a really good contest here. I applaud all the colleagues who have put themselves forward, but I think Kemi's now in a really strong position, and she's always been the one that members wanted to see in that final.
Haven't you failed, though, as a gang of 120 or so voting MPs? The membership want a choice between left and right. You've given them a choice between two right-wingers. That's not a choice, is it, for the next leader?
No, I don't accept that. Both candidates are drawing support from across the party. Kemi, in particular, has got support from every intake, from David Davis right to some of those people who've only been in Parliament a few weeks. So she's got that ability to cut through. Those are the sort of qualities, I think, that make her the candidate Labour fear the most. But now it's up to the party members up and down the country. They'll have the final choice. We members of Parliament have put two candidates now in front of them.
I mean, just on that, isn't she a gaffe-prone leader who will cause the party embarrassment? We saw problems over the remarks about maternity pay, in which she had to eventually clarify her position after 3 attempts.
No, I don't think that's fair. I do think she speaks with an authenticity and sometimes with a first principle that cuts through. But cutting through is an important attribute of being a leader of the opposition, as is diagnosing what it is that we did wrong. And I don't think that the reason we were voted out by a historic defeat was because our policies were wrong. People want low crime, they want our borders controlled, they want their economy growing, but we didn't deliver. So we do have to have some hard conversations as a party about how we relitigate the Blairite legal settlement that we never got round to in power, how we break out of the Gordon Brown orthodoxy, things that really held us back from delivering what ordinary people wanted. Kemi, I think, is the one to do that.
Andrew Griffiths, thank you. Martin, Andrew Griffiths, a supporter of Kemi Badenoch. I'm just joining me now is a supporter for the team Robert Jenrick, Mark Francois, the chairman of the European Research Group of Tory MPs, known to many of our viewers as a regular guest on GB News. Mark Francois, you're smiling. What on earth has just happened? How have these votes happened? I mean, civilians, people outside your world of Tory MP politics are looking on aghast that your guy, Robert Jenrick, goes back 2 votes yesterday and then leaps forward an extraordinary 10 votes today to come second.
Hello again, Chopper. Well, there was a gasp in the room. I was there. So, Rob is the comeback kid. Some pundits, not you, but some of them, this morning had written him off, and now he's in the final. So I've seen a few of these leadership contests, as have you, and I think we both know you can never take anything for granted. So Rob's in the final, and he's done brilliantly, and I think the MPs have now given a really clear, good choice to our voluntary party members. You've got two strong candidates. Personally, I think Rob is the stronger of the two, but our job was to give two credible candidates to the members. I believe we've done that, and commiserations to James, who did run a good campaign.
But they're both from your wing of the party. They're both from the right of the party. They're not. What has a centrist got to? Who will they vote for? That they're two right-wing offers to be the next leader of the party. Members might be worried.
Well, we're a centre-right party, Chopper. But, you know, actually, Robert has got support across the, if you like, the spectrum of the parliamentary party. So you've got John Lamont and Victoria Atkins at one end. You've got maybe Nick Timothy in the middle. Then you've got Andrew Rossendale, John Hayes, myself, perhaps, on the right. So the point is, Rob's support goes right across the party. And that's really important because whoever wins this has got to be a healer. They've got to bring a party that's had a difficult history back together, and I believe Rob has sufficient breadth across the parliamentary party to do that with a voluntary party as well.
And we're not looking towards a Remain-Leave campaign, remain in the ECHR or leave the ECHR, depending on who wins. Of course, your campaign, your guy, Robert Jenrick, wants to leave the ECHR.
Well, I think there will be an element of that. You're quite right. Rob, from the word go, has had a distinct position on the ECHR, which is he believes we should leave it. Kemi ultimately, I think, believes we should remain in it. So there's a very clear choice. Our job as MPs was to give the voluntary party, the people who slog their guts out for 6 weeks to get us re-elected, a clear choice. I think we've performed our duty.
You've also dropped down a generation. I mean, now it's going to be a shift in generational leadership for the Tory party. Will that allow you to project maybe a younger image? It might attract more younger voters, given the average age of the voter who turned Tory at the last election was 63 years old.
Yes, and I think we definitely need to get younger voters back, and I think Rob's the younger of the two candidates too.
Well, Mark Francois, thank you for joining us. That's Mark Francois, of course, a supporter of Robert Jenrick for the Tory leadership. And I think joining me now is the man himself, Martin, if you'll bear with me. Robert Jenrick is here. Robert Jenrick, congratulations on getting to the final two.
Thank you very much, Chris.
You'll be facing members. You'll be there at the event next Thursday, debating with Kemi Badenoch to be the future leader on GBNews. You'll be debating with her to be the next leader of the party. How does it feel?
I'm absolutely delighted to have got the trust and the confidence of so many parliamentary colleagues, and I think that they have respected, resonated the message that I have been delivering for weeks now over the course of this campaign trail, that the country needs to change and the party has to change as well. And I have a very specific plan as to how we do that, whether it's improving the NHS, getting growth going again in our economy, or yes, securing our borders. I don't believe in platitudes. I want us to have a serious plan now as to how we move forward and get this party back into gear for the good of our country.
You were written off this morning. You were going backwards in the votes yesterday. You've leapt forward by 10 votes to come second by 1 to the winner, Kemi Badenoch. How has that happened?
I think in the privacy of the ballot box, my colleagues have voted for who they think is the best person to take this party forward, and I'm honoured that so many of them have put their faith in me.
Were any of your team lending support to another candidate and they came back to you in the final ballot? Is that what's happened?
I don't think so. I think that is in the conspiracy theory box, Chris. It didn't happen. There were too few votes. You know, this was a very small electorate. We had to fight for every single vote.
And is it right to characterise this election between the battle between you and Kemi Badenoch as a leave or remain battle, to reprise the argument of the Brexit battle over the ECHR?
Well, certainly on immigration, we do differ. I believe that we should leave the ECHR. In fact, I think it's the only way in which we'll control our borders, we'll get foreign criminals out of this country, we'll get terror suspects out, and we'll actually restore sovereignty to Parliament. And also, we do disagree on whether we should have a capped system of migration. We've got to have that democratic lock so we can look the public in the eye this time and say immigration is actually going to come down. I have a very clear plan as to how we fix these problems with our borders and restore the trust and confidence of the British public. But it's not just about that. It's also about the health service, the economy, getting homes built for young people. I want our party to be the serious party, once again, of British politics with answers to the questions that the public really really demand of us.
And this leadership campaign now goes the full distance, because I think Kemi Badenoch wasn't willing to end it early. So, result on the 2nd of November.
Well, I don't know that for certain. My position is very clear on that point. I think that it should be the next leader, whether that's myself or Kemi, at the dispatch box, taking the fight to Rachel Reeves in that very damaging budget that we expect at the end of the month. So I hope we can bring this contest forward by a few days so that we can give the country the energetic, fresh opposition that we need.
Very finally, what's your plan for tonight? A drink?
There will be drinks involved, but I'm also going to an event in Suffolk to meet members of the party, so the campaign doesn't stop.
Robert Jenrick, thank you for joining us today on GB News. Robert Jenrick there, a surprised and delighted MP going forward to the final two against Kemi Badenoch as they try and find someone to take on Sir Keir Starmer as leader of the opposition.
Thank you, Chris. So get Robert Jenrick to put some numbers on the lottery. By the way, get his numbers off him. I think he's one heck of a lucky guy today. Thank you very, very much there, Chris Hope. And let's move on now to speak about this further with the former Conservative MP, Daniel Kaczynski, who's been backing Kemi Badenoch all along. Daniel, welcome to the show. An astonishing chain of events. I mean, Kemi Badenoch putting on an astonishing 12 votes overnight, Robert Jenrick putting on 10, and it was James Cleverly's turn to go backwards, losing 2 votes. That means that all of Tom Tugendhat's votes went into 2 right-wing candidates, for want of a better phrase. Not many people saw this coming. There was a late surge on Kemi in the betting markets. You must be delighted.
I am absolutely delighted, because I can see how dangerous and difficult the situation that the United Kingdom is facing, particularly after 4 or 5 years of a Labour government under Sir Keir Starmer. We now have a society where 22 million Britons are taking benefits, and the overall welfare bill for the United Kingdom this year will be 258 billion. I recently wrote an article for GBNews to say how concerned I am about the precarious financial situation that the United Kingdom finds herself in. And I think that Kemi has the guts, quite frankly, and the courage to take these very, very difficult decisions, whether it's taking on the trade unions or whether it's slimming down the state so that we can actually afford these bills and not continue to rack up massive debts for future generations to have to grapple with. I see Thatcher in her. When I was first elected in 2005, I had the great privilege of meeting Margaret Thatcher. Nobody has come anywhere near Margaret Thatcher in terms of balancing the books, repaying the national debt, taking on the trade unions, making Britain competitive and productive. And I really do see, in my interactions with Kemi, I see the same fire, the same courage, and the same conviction that we had in Margaret Thatcher.
Daniel, a lot of people will be saying, OK, it's down to the final 2. Alison Pearson in the Telegraph said, if Cleverly wins, I'm off to reform. So the centrist candidate in James Cleverly, that's off the radar. You've got 2 right-wingers, as I said. But the big question is this. Both of these candidates were in power for a substantial amount of time. The Conservatives were in power for 14 years. All of those promises on immigration, on welfare, they weren't met. Why should we trust either of these candidates this time around?
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind that the elephant in the room is what they will say and do with regards to dealing with illegal migration in the English Channel. But let's not forget one thing. Ahead of the last general election, only 3% of the electorate believed that the Rwanda deal was sustainable, appropriate, and could work. Unfortunately, the Conservative Party got itself rather too close, somewhat incestuously, with Rwanda. And so clearly there was great concern about whether or not this country was the appropriate jurisdiction to send illegal migrants. I very much hope that we will pull out of the European Court of Human Rights, and it's not correct what Marc Francois says, the position of Kemi Badenoch. She has not ruled out pulling out of the European Court of Human Rights. We need to ensure that criminals and people who have come to this country illegally are deported, but they are deported to a jurisdiction that the British people have confidence in. Australia is a classic case in point. Their deal with Nauru, a tiny Pacific nation in the Pacific Ocean, a population of only 11,000, is working. It's proved to work. the accommodation facilities in Nauru are now empty because the criminal gangs are not targeting Australia, because they know that their customers, the illegal migrants, will be shipped out to Nauru where there are no job opportunities. So this contract that Australia continues to pay Nauru for maintaining the buildings is absolutely brilliant, because it acts as a deterrent. We've got to send illegal migrants abroad. It's just got to be to the right country and not to Rwanda.
OK, well, I think the time for all the talking is over, Daniel Kaczynski, because that's the decision those candidates are going to have to make when they duke it out on GB News, of course, on October the 17th. An exclusive head-to-head between Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick. Daniel, thank you very much for having your company on the show. Always a pleasure. Now, coming up, first it was the winter fuel allowance, and next, Chancellor Rachel Reeves is eyeing up a £2 billion tax grab by lowering the tax-free cap on pensions withdrawals. Today's uncomfortable question is simply this: does the Labour Party hate pensioners? I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
National Trust Director General has said something rather curious. She's admitted that 70% of the charity's staff are Union Jack-hating progressive activists. Yes, this was speaking at a Labour Party fringe event. The boss of the charity, Hilary McGrady, acknowledged that there was a gap between her staff's views and the views held by the wider public. So was she being honest? Joining me now to discuss this is historian and broadcaster Rafe Hadel-Mankoo, who I believe is with me. Rafe, thank you very much indeed. Can this be true?
The founders of the National Trust and later figures involved in it, like my hero James Lees-Milne, were really motivated by love of nation. But I think that love of nation in the Trust has become actively, national self-loathing. And that's really the state of modern Britain. And with the Trust, what we've done is we've actually entrusted our national heritage to those people who actually actively despise our national heritage. And it's, it's utter madness.
Have these people wanted to take over charities like the National Trust for their political ends, or is it just something that happens? Is it just the type of people who work in charities?
This has been part of the long march through the institutions, that people need to understand that Britain is now a post-revolutionary society. So the buildings that house our institutions look the same, but the people who now run them bear no comparison to the generations who lovingly built and ran them. They are cuckoos in the nest, and we need to understand that. And of course, once you realize that, of course, that explains completely why, the National Trust and others have crudely tried to denigrate our national heroes and link them and their houses to colonialism and slavery, as they ludicrously tried to do.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Time is 25 past 4 even. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, Labour's war on pensioners shows no sign of abating after it emerged today that Rachel Reeves is considering a cut on the tax-free lump sum that savers can withdraw from their personal pensions. The Chancellor is reportedly considering the move following recommendations by two major think tanks and hopes it could raise or plunder around £2 billion for the Treasury. However, there are concerns the policy could open opened the door to legal challenges and further damaged the government's image following the controversial cut to the winter fuel allowance for 10 million British pensioners. And to discuss this further, I'm now joined by the founder of thepensionervote.com, and that's David Pinless. David, welcome to the show. Absolute pleasure, as always, to have your company. You've been fighting hard for pensioners, finding the pensioners' vote, speaking to thousands and thousands of pensioners across the land. When we spoke last time, it was about the desperation of the winter fuel allowance being cut, and now there's a fresh misery. The pensions raid. Tell us, David, do you think quite simply this government has got a problem with pensioners?
Well, Martin, your question is, does the Labour government hate pensioners? And my initial answer is that you could be forgiven for thinking so. Labour is using the £22 billion black hole, the claimed £1 billion black hole, to tax anybody to oblivion. What easier group to go for than pensioners who are vulnerable and defenceless? First of all, they go for the winter fuel allowance. Only Labour MPs voted to scrap it. No MPs from other parties voted to scrap it. And now they are considering reducing the tax-free lump sum you can take from your private pension from the age of 55. Now, as you probably know, Martin, this was capped at £268,000, and the proposal is to reduce it to £100,000. So first of all, they went for poor pensioners, poor existing pensioners, and now they're talking about going for future pensioners. Now, some of your viewers may be saying, well, this new proposal is only going to affect wealthy pensioners. Well, I can tell you, Martin, I was contacted by one of our members today, actually asking for financial advice. And I don't give financial advice, but what he was saying was that he has a large mortgage. He's just coming up to retirement age, and his plan was to take the tax-free cash and to pay off his mortgage, and then he could live without any mortgage repayments in his monthly outgoings. And he says if this proposal is adopted, then he won't be able to retire. He'll have to keep on working. And as I say, I'm not qualified to give financial advice. I wouldn't do so. I wouldn't advise for it or against it. But anybody coming up to retirement age must be wondering, should I take my tax-free cash now if I'm over 55? And the risk is that people will possibly start to have a knee-jerk reaction and make inappropriate, maybe, financial decisions that affect their financial future. Okay, so, we've got, if you compare, say, pensioners and train drivers are unionised. Train drivers can withdraw their labour. Pensioners can't withdraw their labour. Train drivers did withdraw their labour. The government didn't negotiate. They capitulated. Pensioners cannot withdraw their labour. So this is why I formed the thepensionervote.com, so that existing and future pensioners can unite together to act in the interests of pensioners. And, Martin, politics is all about choices. Labour have chosen to give £11.5 billion to overseas climate aid, whilst raiding the accounts of UK taxpayers. So there is perception, I feel, in the country that there's more good being done abroad than there is being done at home. And you have to ask the question, what are they going to go for next? Will it be the means testing of the state pension itself? Will the retirement age be raised to 70? Will free prescriptions to the over 60s in England will they end? And, worst of all, the most cynical amongst us are starting to feel that the upcoming assisted dying bill, which is possibly going to be rushed through Parliament, does anyone really think that a broken, overstressed NHS is going to be trusted to administer assisted dying? This is how we are feeling. And I think this is how the country is feeling, Martin.
And David, when we spoke last time, of course, we were referring to the fact that the Labour Party's own data from 2017, their own estimates, 4,000 pensioners would perish if the winter fuel allowance was cut. They did that anyway. And we spoke at the time, David Pinless, about how there was a huge sense of outrage amongst pensioners getting politically motivated. Old people vote, but they don't particularly vote for the Labour Party. I think at the last general election, David, it was only around about 14%. Are you getting contacted by any pensioners about how they voted and about how they're looking to change that vote?
Well, actually, when people join the website, one of the questions that we ask on joining is, how did you vote at the last general election? A number of pensioners have written into us saying that they've changed their minds about how they are going to vote. So although we don't intend to influence, to try and persuade people to vote for a particular party, we present people with the facts and we let them choose how they vote. Of course, we encourage them to register to vote because actually 50% of our members, and we now have a very large number, are not registered to vote. Wow. So we encourage people to become politically engaged.
And do you think there could be a grey revolution? We've got a quick 30 seconds. Could there be a grey revolution of pensioners deciding to vote en masse? And as we talked before, potentially unseating some of these Labour Party MPs who voted to kill their winter fuel allowance?
I think there is going to be a grey backlash, to use your terminology. You started off by asking me, do I think Labour hates pensioners? And I conclude by saying, well, having said all the things I've said, my conclusion is they do.
Well, astonishing, strong words. Thank you very much for joining us as ever, and thank you especially David Pindus, the founder of the pensionervote.com, for sharing the anecdotes of your users. Let's make sure we keep this conversation going. Thank you so much for your work. Thanks.
Thank you for having me.
Lots more still to come between now and 5 o'clock, including reaction to the news that immigration has fueled the fastest rise in the UK's population in over 5 decades. We'll be asking just how consequential this could be, and do we need much tougher border controls? Of course we do, when we actually get them. But first, here's your latest news headlines, and it's Katie Bowen.
Martin, thank you, and good afternoon to you. The time has just gone 4:30. I'm Katie Bowen in the GB newsroom. Now, as you've been hearing this afternoon, Tory MPs have now selected the final 2 candidates in the Conservative leadership election, with Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick making it through to the members' vote. Kemi Badenoch received 42 votes, Robert Jenrick picked up 41, and James Cleverly received 37, meaning he has now been eliminated from the race. Cleverly has thanked his colleagues, party members and the public for the support he received during his campaign. Voting will open for Conservative Party members in an online ballot tomorrow, closing on October the 31st. Elsewhere in politics, Sir Keir Starmer faced questions in the House of Commons this lunchtime as Prime Minister's questions returned. The leader of opposition, Rishi Sunak, probed Sir Keir on whether tax rises were on the horizon in the upcoming budget. The Tory leader, in one of his last PMQs, questioned the Prime Minister on if a promise not to raise taxes in the Chancellor's budget applies to national insurance contributions from both employers and employees. Here's what the Prime Minister had to say.
We made an absolute commitment in relation to not raising tax on working people. He, of course, was the expert's expert on raising taxes. And what did we get in return for it? We got a broken economy, broken public services, and a £22 billion black hole in the economy. We're here to stabilise the economy, and we will do so.
To the US, the biggest hurricane in a century is hitting Florida today, with American President Joe Biden warning it's a matter of life and death for residents. These are live pictures on your screens. We're bringing you from Fort Myers in the United States. Around 1 million people living in the path of Hurricane Milton are being evacuated with concerns that lives are in danger. A few moments ago, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis held a press conference where he updated residents on the measures in place for their safety.
There is high confidence that this hurricane is going to pack a major, major punch and do an awful lot of damage. The state is actively fulfilling over 1,500 missions. We've delivered massive amounts of supplies, meals, water bottles, sandbags, tarps, generators to be able to help our local communities.
Well, those are your latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Katie Bowen. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Katie. Now, I want to hear from you. Get your views in, gbnews.com/your say. 2 big questions. Can Kemi Badenoch or Robert Jenrick save the Tories? And do you think the Labour Party hates pensioners? I'll read out the best of your messages a little later in the show. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
Hello again. Here's your GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. For many of us, it has been a pretty wet few days, and we are actually going to see a lot of that rain, those showers easing as we go through the next 24 hours or so. We do still have low pressure nearby, and we are still seeing some rain for the next couple of hours, but a lot of that rain's pushing its way southwards and breaking up. Most of the showers will be easing and clearing away as well as we go through this evening, with some clearer skies developing, particularly across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and later Northern England overnight. All of that happening because we have a brisk northerly wind, and that could lead to some blustery conditions for some of us. In the north, where we get those clear skies, it is going to be a chilly night. Could be a touch of frost in some places. Still a bit milder, though, towards the south. Here, it's actually going to be a bit of a damp start to the day, but further north, away from areas exposed to that northerly wind, it's largely dry across central southern Scotland with some bright sunshine, but elsewhere where we have that northerly wind, we are going to see some showers pushing through. Some showers across parts of Northern Ireland first thing, and down the eastern side of England as well. Elsewhere, many places across central northern England starting the day largely fine. A few showers for parts of Wales, and like I said, across the far south of England, a bit of a damp start. But that rain will clear away as we go through the day, and so for many, tomorrow is going to be a much drier, a much brighter day than of late. A few showers inland, but the showers will be most frequent around areas exposed to that northerly wind. And in that northerly wind, it is going to feel quite chilly. Temperatures dropping compared to how high they have been recently, 13 or 14 Celsius at best towards the south, and feeling a bit colder than that in that wind. More fine weather to come for many of us as we go through the end of the day, but still some showers in some places, particularly towards the far northwest of Scotland. A bit of a north-south split as we go towards the weekend. Always wettest towards the north. There could be some winteriness, some sleet or snow over the higher ground. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. County Durham still issues for the A1M, and this afternoon still closed both ways between Aycliffe Junction 59 and Bradbury at 60 for flooding, queuing back to Burtree Junction 58. Slow going southbound M6 down towards Coventry at 3, a lane shut away from the Corley services. There's emergency repairs ongoing, it's pretty slow. Eastbound M54 Junction 1 Wolverhampton through towards the M6 queuing, and early obstructions being lifted about 3:05, but still quite slow. Eastbound M4 in Berkshire, Wokingham and Bracknell Junction 10 through towards the Maidenhead turn-off, that's Junction 8, a lane shut for a breakdown causing delays. And there's a medical emergency, means a lane shut and slow going eastbound on the M27 from Southampton Airport at Junction 5 through towards Hedge End at 7. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Welcome back. It's 4:39. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, surging immigration has fueled the quickest rise in Britain's population for more than 5 decades. The number of UK residents hit 68.25 million mid last year, having added over 660,000 to its ranks in the year 12 months prior, marking an increase of 0.97%. Now, the numbers produced by the Office for National Statistics have sparked fresh calls for much stricter border controls. And let's discuss this now with my good pal, and that's the Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control, Robert Bates. Robert, welcome to the show. Let's start with the basics. More people are dying in Britain than are born, so our indigenous population is on the wane. That's a fact. And yet the numbers are going up. They've gone up by 1.2 million in 8 years, and that's solely down to net migration. We've got a problem with our borders. We can't control them. Tell us how we got to this position.
We've got a huge problem with our borders, and let's be perfectly clear about what these figures actually tell us. They tell us that the reason why there is a crisis in the housing market, the reason why people are struggling to get GPs appointments, the reason people can't get their children into the school places that they want is because of immigration. We've had for far too long in this country an economic consensus that exists that allowing hundreds of thousands, over 1 million people to come into our country every year will only help grow the economy. If you look at the actual statistics on GDP per capita, they're in a huge period of decline. We are all less well off as this experiment continues.
And Rob Bates, also, we covered just a couple of weeks ago the fact there is now £8 billion per year spent on benefits, unemployment benefits to people born overseas. £8 billion. We just got rid of the winter fuel allowance, £1.4 billion. So the notion that open borders, as we more or less have, is bringing the economy up is for the birds. That isn't the case. We're getting poorer, we're getting more crowded, and yet there seems to be no appetite to control it. Do you have any faith that today's announcement, the Conservative Party have a new leader in either Kemi Badenoch or Robert Jenrick? Is that a silver bullet to control this? They're promising a good fight. Do you believe them?
So I was personally very relieved to see that James Cleverly had fallen by the wayside in this competition. I think he tried to talk a tough game on immigration. He clearly claimed that his endeavours on reducing the net migration figures by a couple of tens of thousands were huge seismic wins. They were nothing of the sort, because we're still expected to have a mass migration into the UK of over 1 million each year for the foreseeable future. Robert Jenrick is, in my personal view, the candidate that perhaps understands the issues posed by mass migration the most out of many Conservatives that we've seen for a long time. But I think that the trouble he will face is that people just don't trust the Conservative Party on this issue. And why would they? We've had 14 years now of absolute anarchy at our borders.
Another story that caught my eye today, Rob, and I know it did yours, and there's been a development in the European Union. In fact, 15 countries out of 27 member states have written an astonishing letter to Brussels, Rob, demanding stricter immigration controls in the free Schengen zone, the open borders-loving European Union. Rob Bates, tell us more about this.
Yeah, the horrid irony that as Brexit Britain drifts further leftward, and the promises that were made during the referendum to bring back control of our borders looking less and less likely, that the European Union and European nations seem to be actually gripping this issue. And that's because, as far as I can decipher, we have politicians that are actually responding to the electorate. They're responding to the concerns. Germany, Netherlands, Hungary, they all have politicians that seem to be recognising that the pressure that is being posed by illegal migration is something that is causing huge societal tension and huge unease in the population at large. On our side of the channel, we seem to just have a political class that walk around European capitals, talk a good talk, and then do absolutely nothing about it. And it's really miserable to see that as the Europeans are getting their act together, we're going to be facing another 5 years of sheer incompetence.
Yeah, and Rob Bates, this announcement today is 15 of the EU member states, led by the Netherlands and Austria, signed by the big nations, Germany, France, Italy. They're proposing the notion that the police can arrest anybody in any of their member states who is there illegally, and then they would deport them to either their home nation, or if that's not safe, to the European member state from whence they came. This is arrest them and deport them. This is far-right politics. This is further far-right than even Nigel Farage, and yet this is coming from the beloved EU member states. I wonder what the Remainers got to say about that, Rob.
Well, it was always a misnomer that the Remain campaign somehow were able to pitch the EU as this kind of liberal, fluffy, cosmopolitan entity. It's obviously an area with very different populations and a fluctuation in political temperament that I think we would find on this side of the channel quite startling and quite, well, in many ways, it opens up a lot more opportunities for them, because they're clearly now having a conversation about immigration. They're clearly moving in a direction that a lot of the populations of Europe would feel very comfortable with, whereas we are stuck with effectively 5 years of a Labour government that don't know how to even begin on addressing this issue. And on the topic of deportations, that's something that just simply doesn't come up in our conversation. We have 1.2 million illegal migrants in this country, and yet no one seems to be setting out any agenda through which they could actually reverse this huge, staggering criminal number.
It's an astonishing state of affairs, Rob Bates. We voted to Brexit, to take back control of our borders. We didn't, and the European Union member states are voting to take back control of their borders, and now we're the weak man of Europe. What a state of affairs. Thank you very much for joining us, Rob Bates. Always a pleasure to have your company. Now, coming up, we'll be live across the pond as millions of people in Florida are rushing to leave their homes as Hurricane Milton races towards the state's west coast. As you can see, live pictures on your screen there from Tampa, Florida. We'll get all the very latest on this in just a moment. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
A furious online debate has been sparked after, well, let's just say a rather large man, I mean, he really was big, was snapped trying to fit into his seat on the plane.
It's led to some to ask whether obese passengers should have to pay for extra plane seats so they don't inconvenience others.
Some say, though, that's cruel. So should plus-size passengers pay extra for plane seats? Let's talk to former presenter of Fat Families, Steve Miller, who's in Stratford-upon-Avon, and the director of All About Obesity, Sarah LeBrock, who's in beautiful Harrogate. Good to see you both this morning. Sarah, what do you think?
Well, we've had this debate before with Steve and I, to be fair, and I think it's one of those things where planes are just not fit for purpose anymore. So people's bodies have been growing over the years. We know this, the obesity rates are increasing, etc. But what's happening to planes is the seats are decreasing in size. So they're just not fit for purpose and not fit for the population. So I think it's just one of these things where we need to be more empathetic to people, that they're trying to fit into an environment that isn't shaped for them at all. So I think we do need to kind of say, well, what's right here? Is it the person not being able to fit in the seat, or is it the seat not being fit for purpose for the person? And I think we need to really, look at things from that perspective as well. Instead of thinking the person's doing something wrong, how about the environment might be doing something wrong?
Steve?
It's not about blaming, but the message you can't put out, in my opinion, is that it's okay to be obese and don't worry about it. You see, what I'm saying here is free plane seats. If you're offering free plane seats, an extra seat, that's going to normalise obesity.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. 10 to 5. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, the biggest hurricane in over a century is expected to hit Florida later on today, with American President Joe Biden warning it's a matter of life and death for residents there. Now, around 1 million people living in the path of Hurricane Milton are currently being evacuated. And the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, had this to say a short while ago.
Hurricane Milton is heading our way. It will arrive either late tonight or early tomorrow morning. We are bracing and are prepared to receive a major hit. We're facing this with the seriousness it deserves, but also with the determination that we will get through this.
Well, it's do or die, it's big, and we can now cross the Cape Coral in Florida. I speak with Florida resident Brent Gardner. Brent, welcome to the show. You're live on GB News. Can you tell us how close you are to the hurricane landing and what situation is like out there right now?
It's kind of a fluid situation, but we think we're definitely inside the cone. It's going to land anywhere from where we are here to just north of us in Sarasota, or potentially if something changed, it would return to its initial track back north in Tampa, but it's hitting here.
And Brent, you seem safe now. We spoke to another resident yesterday, a guy called Aaron Pilkington. He was knuckling down in his flat. He said his place was Hurricane Force 5 rated. What kind of property are you in? And do you expect there to be damage, or are you going to be safe?
Yeah, we've evacuated. My home is actually on the water in the Caloosahatchee, a place that's expecting to get a lot of storm surge. So we've evacuated east of I-75, which is a major artery here, about 20 miles or so from the Gulf of Mexico. So I am in a house that is highly rated, and we're hopeful that here we'll see very limited damage and that we won't see the type of storm surge we'll see near the water.
And Brent, we just got some pictures on our screen now, some live pictures from Fort Myers of the poolside palm trees bending rather savagely, the rain lashing in, heavy winds. So how long is this expected to go on for, Brent, before you can go back to your original property and check out its status?
Yeah, we don't expect the actual eye of the storm to hit until sometime late this evening, at which point, following that, we'll start to see that really high storm surge. Our hope and our expectation is that sometime tomorrow, once it's peaked, we'll have an opportunity to go back, assess damage, and start repairs and remediation. So it'll probably be tomorrow morning when the light comes out for sure.
And in terms of the numbers of people, I mean, we've got some live pictures now on the screen from Sarasota in Florida. Extreme amounts of wind and rain lashing in off the coast there. How close is Sarasota to where you are right now, Brent?
That's about 50 or so miles north of us. But, you know, as far as this hurricane goes, given its width and the size of the wind field, we're in the same situation right now. So fortunately, it sounds like a lot of folks heeded the evacuation. The traffic certainly indicated that yesterday and the day before. But, you know, truthfully, wherever this hits, it's not going to just be where it comes in, but really a significant area to the north and south are going to feel substantial impacts similar to what we saw from Ian just 2 years ago.
And Brent, Joe Biden said the time to evacuate is now. It's do or die. You're knuckling down. You're staying put. What made you decide to stay, Brent?
I was fortunate. We had a fairly good understanding of where we thought the initial safety area would be. And though the advice has been to evacuate, the advice is to move only far enough away so that way you find your way to safety. And fortunately, I had a friend's mom who took us in and has a house that should be relatively safe in a safe place out of an evacuation zone. And it's a substantial build. So it gave us an opportunity to stay as close by as possible.
And Brent, we've got a quick 30 seconds left. How much damage are you expecting on your property? Are you expecting it to be quite hammered in?
You know, we're hopeful. You know, again, this storm has taken a couple of different shifts in the last 12 to 24 hours. I do expect that there will be substantial flooding, and I'm hopeful that ultimately the wind field, which is newly expected, doesn't do the same kind of damage that we saw during Ian. So we're hopeful, but you know, someone, either us or one of our neighbors, will have a chance to lose everything tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. You stay safe out there, please, Brent Godwin. Thank you so much for joining us and updating us here on GB News. Now, plenty more coming up in the final hour of the show, including all the reactions to dramatic news. James Cleverly has been kicked out of the Tory leadership race. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News.
Hello again. Here's your GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. For many of us, it has been a pretty wet few days, and we are actually going to see a lot of that rain, those showers easing as we go through the next 24 hours or so. We do still have low pressure nearby, and we are still seeing some rain for the next couple of hours, but a lot of that rain's pushing its way southwards and breaking up. Most of the showers will be easing and clearing away as well as we go through this evening, with some clearer skies developing, particularly across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and later Northern England overnight. All of that happening because we have a brisk northerly wind, and that could lead to some blustery conditions for some of us. In the north, where we get those clear skies, it is going to be a chilly night. Could be a touch of frost in some places. Still a bit milder, though, towards the south. Here, it's actually going to be a bit of a damp start to the day, but further north, away from areas exposed to that northerly wind, it's largely dry across central southern Scotland with some bright sunshine, but elsewhere where we have that northerly wind, we are going to see some showers pushing through. Some showers across parts of Northern Ireland first thing, and down the eastern side of England as well. Elsewhere, many places across central northern England starting the day largely fine. A few showers for parts of Wales, and like I said, across the far south of England, a bit of a damp start. But that rain will clear away as we go through the day, and so for many, tomorrow is going to be a much drier, a much brighter day than of late. A few showers inland, but the showers will be most frequent around areas exposed to that northerly wind. And in that northerly wind, it is going to feel quite chilly. Temperatures dropping compared to how high they have been recently, 13 or 14 Celsius at best towards the south, and feeling a bit colder than that in that wind. More fine weather to come for many of us as we go through the end of the day, but still some showers in some places, particularly towards the far northwest of Scotland. A bit of a north-south split as we go towards the weekend. Always wettest towards the north. There could be some winteriness, some sleet or snow over the higher ground. Bye-bye.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Still flooding means the A1M in County Durham closed both ways between Bradbury and Aycliffe. That's junction 60 to 59, queuing back to Bertree at junction 58. We're seeing queues still southbound for the M6 between the Cawley services and junction 3 for Coventry, a lane shut there for emergency repairs. Now, big queues embarking in London, Ripple Road to the A13, slow going just by the Lodge Avenue junction. It's all due to an earlier police incident. We're seeing queues just back towards Dagenham, London bound, back towards Newham. The North Circle are struggling too. And issues in Hampshire either side of the M27, eastbound 5 towards Hedge End at 7. There's a medical emergency. A lane shut westbound, a breakdown, slow going from Hamble at 8 through towards Hedge End at 7. And for now, that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
There's just good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. on this dramatic afternoon of politics, and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, a shock result in the Tory leadership contest.
Kemi Badenoch, 42 votes. James Cleverly, 37 votes. And Robert Jenrick, 41 votes.
Yeah, shock news this morning. The bookies' favourite, former Home Secretary James Cleverly, has been dramatically voted out and will not be leader of the Conservative Party. Kemi Badenoch will now face off against Robert Jenrick in the final two. And the finalists, of course, will take part in a live event on October the 17th, exclusively live on GB News. And across the pond, millions of people in Florida are rushing to leave their homes as Hurricane Milton races towards the state's west coast. As you can see, live pictures on your screen now from Tampa, Florida. The rain and the wind battering in to the coast on Florida. And this is what Florida Governor Ron DeSantis had to say a short while ago.
We are bracing and are prepared to receive a major hit.
Once a show, always a pleasure to have your company. So, bracing for a major hit in Florida. Well, James Cleverly got a major hit earlier on today in Westminster. A hurricane pulled him out of the leadership race. Nobody saw that coming this morning. He was 16-1 on with the bookies to make it into the final two. But inexplicable alchemy, dark arts happened. A shock surprise. Cleverly is now out on his ear. The final two, Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick, will go head-to-head on October the 17th, live on GB News. Let me know your thoughts on that surprising result. Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. Now it's your headlines, and here's Katie Bowen.
Martin, thank you very much, and good afternoon to you. The time has just gone 5 o'clock. I'm Katie Bowen in the GB newsroom. Now, as you've been hearing this afternoon, Tory MPs have now selected the final two candidates in the Conservative leadership election, with Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick making it through to the members' vote. Kemi Badenoch received 42 votes, Robert Jenrick picked up 41, and James Cleverly received 37, meaning he has now been eliminated from the race. In a tweet, Cleverly has thanked his colleagues, party members and the public for the support he received during his campaign. Voting will open for Conservative Party members in an online ballot tomorrow, which will close on October the 31st. Elsewhere in politics, Sir Keir Starmer faced questions in the House of Commons this lunchtime as Prime Minister's questions returned. The leader of the opposition, Rishi Sunak, probed Sir Keir on whether tax rises were on the horizon in the upcoming budget. The Tory leader, in one of his last PMQs, questioned the Prime Minister on if a promise not to raise taxes in the Chancellor's budget applies to national insurance contributions from both employers and employees. Here's what the Prime Minister had to say.
We made an absolute commitment in relation to not raising tax on working people. He, of course, was the expert's expert on raising taxes. And what did we get in return for it? We got a broken economy, broken public services, and a £22 billion black hole in the economy. We're here to stabilise the economy, and we will do so.
To the US, the biggest hurricane in a century is now hitting Florida, with American President Joe Biden warning it's a matter of life and death for residents. If you're watching on television, these are live pictures we are bringing you from Fort Myers in the United States, where the hurricane is now impacting. Around 1 million people living in the path of Hurricane Milton are being evacuated, with concerns that lives are in danger. A short while ago, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis held a press conference where he updated residents on the measures in place for their safety.
There is high confidence that this hurricane is going to pack a major, major punch and do an awful lot of damage. The state is actively fulfilling over 1,500 missions. We've delivered massive amounts of supplies, meals, water bottles, sandbags, tarps, generators to be able to help our local communities.
Survivors of accidents across London's transport network have today accused Transport for London of being rotten to its core over a failure to address safety issues on trains and buses across the city. Campaigner Sarah de la Lagarde, who lost her right arm and leg after being run over by 2 trains in 2022, warned Mayor Sadiq Khan that if change does not happen, someone else could be seriously injured or killed.
We believe that TfL is failing to meet its most fundamental obligation to ensure the safe transit of commuters. Our findings indicate that the safety issues within TfL are not merely isolated incidents, but are indicative of systemic and institutional failings, stemming from the incompetence at the leadership level.
And finally, Rebecca Vardy has been ordered to pay Colleen Rooney a further £100,000 following their high-profile Wagatha Christie libel battle. Mrs Vardy sued Mrs Rooney for libel but lost the High Court legal action in 2022. Mrs Rooney had earlier accused Mrs Vardy of leaking her private information to the press, with Wednesday marking the 5th anniversary of the viral social media post at the heart of the dispute. Those are your latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Katie Bowen. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Katie. Now, a shock result in the race to become the next leader of the Conservative Party. Former Home Secretary James Cleverly has been sensationally knocked out of the race to become the next leader of the Tories. And let's remind ourselves of the moment that that dramatic result was announced.
Kemi Badenoch, 42 votes. James Cleverly, 37 votes. And Robert Jenrick, 41 votes. So, as a result of that ballot, James Cleverly is eliminated from the contest, and Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick now go forward to the ballot of members.
Well, that result took a lot of people by surprise. In the last hour, James Cleverly has taken to social media to thank all of those who supported him.
We didn't do it. I didn't make it through, and that is massively disappointing for me. But one of the things that has really lifted my spirits is how many people have given me and the team so much support. So I want to say a huge thank you to you all. Could not have done any of this without you. Makes me proud to be a Conservative. Makes me proud that we can pull together as a team. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, we can now speak with GB News' political editor, Chris Hope, who's live with us now from the Westminster Hall there. Chris, welcome back to the show. So we have, at the moment, Chris, a hurricane ripping through Florida, a political tornado ripped through Westminster. Who saw this coming? Nobody saw this coming. This morning, James Cleverly was 16-1 on to make the final two. A day of high drama. Have you made any sense of it for us yet?
No, I think it's very hard to understand what quite happened. 120 Tory MPs voted. Let's remind our viewers and listeners what happened yesterday. You saw there Robert Jenrick slipping back to 31 MPs from 33, Kemi Badenoch gaining 2 to 20 to 30, and James Cleverly surging forward from 21 to 39, up 18 votes. So that looked like the direction of travel. Many people thought, MPs told me this, that Robert Jenrick was trending backwards. Kemi Badenoch had a degree of momentum. In fact, Robert Jenrick was on GB News today telling us on our breakfast programme that it looked like you saw James Cleverly had got there into the final two, and MPs had to choose between Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch. So even Robert Jenrick himself was effectively, in a way, conceding that one of the two places had gone to James Cleverly, and that has completely been overturned. It looks like possibly that James Cleverly's supporters may have got a bit cocky and felt that they can lend support to either Jenrick or Badenoch to stop one of those two getting through, and managed to let both those through by a mistake, killing off James Cleverly. That is possible. It seems extraordinary. No one can quite understand it. For his part, James Cleverly was at a book launch last night with Boris Johnson. I photographed him with him. It looked like, to an extent, it was not definitely was not Boris Johnson saying support this man, but it wouldn't have hurt him, you'd have thought, amongst the base to see Boris Johnson in the same room as James Cleverly. At the same time, Robert Jenrick was hosting an event. He had a drinks party. He phoned dozens of Tory MPs last night to convince them to come over. It seems to have worked. He surged in these numbers by 10 MPs to 41. And guess what? Kemi Badenoch has gone from third to winning with 42. It's extraordinary. It's the biggest surprise in Tory politics, I think, and I was there, since Boris Johnson announced shortly after the 2016 EU referendum that he was pulling out of the leadership race. That was a similar gasp that you heard in the committee room 14 just now when you played out that result being read out by Bob Blackman, to when that announcement was made in Rusey up at 80 Whitehall, and I was in the room for that, and that was a moment. But I can't think of a more dramatic moment in Conservative Party politics in the past, whatever it is, 8 years until this moment.
Now it means that the two surviving candidates, Ms Badenoch and Mr Jenrick, will duke it out on GB News on October the 17th in that exclusive head-to-head. It now means, Chris, that the leader of the party will be on the political right. The centrist candidate, Mr Cleverly, he's now bitten the dust. So what will that mean for the future direction of the party? What can we expect to see from them in terms of policy direction? And how might that land with a lot of Tory MPs out there in the Shires who don't agree with their hard line on things like immigration and perhaps even leaving the ECHR?
So there are some takeaways from this, Martin. We are now dropping down a generation to a younger leader, taking on a Labour leader in his 60s. I think they're in their early 40s, Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch. That's a 20-year age gap. So the Tory party can look more like the future of the country rather than older people. I mean, that's a big issue for the party, given the average age of a Tory voter converting from a Labour supporter was 63 in last month's election. There's that. I think you are seeing a lurch to the right in the leadership. The leader, it looks like, will be more in tune, I think, with the selectorate choosing that individual. There's around 140,000 or so Conservative members. They will now be more in tune with their leader. But conversely, it looks like this new leader may be out of tune with a lot of the moderate base of the Tory party here. And how that plays out, I don't know. But it certainly looks like this kind of idea that you have these leaders who aren't really in tune with the members. We saw that, didn't we, when Rishi Sunak was appointed as leader without any vote by party members, and of course Liz Truss was pushed out by her own MPs, and Boris Johnson lost confidence of his MPs. So you're aligning that together, but you may have other problems. It also looks like we are faced with a leadership battle, a leave and remain battle, if you like, of the European Convention on Human Rights. Robert Jenrick told us on GB News he will, on day one, start pushing for an idea on how to leave the ECHR if he gets elected Prime Minister in 2028, 2029. We have not got that commitment yet from Kemi Badenoch. And we're yet to hear from Kemi Badenoch, which she's recording a clip with her reaction to this extraordinary moment in Tory politics today. We have, of course, heard from Robert Jenrick an hour ago.
Of high drama and massive surprises in Westminster. Thank you very much, Chris Hope, for being there for us and trying to help us make sense of the drama. Thank you. I can now speak with the Welsh Conservative member of the Senedd, James Evans, who is backing Robert Jenrick. Welcome to the show, James. You've got to be delighted. Your man yesterday was absolutely... the wheels were coming off his campaign. Somehow he put 12 votes on overnight. He put 10 votes on overnight and came in at 41. If I were you, I'd buy a lottery ticket, mate.
Well, I should go out and buy a lottery ticket. No, I'm very, very pleased. You know, Robert's always come across. He's got a clear set of policies, not warm words of how he's going to change the Conservative Party, how he wants to change the country. I'm just so pleased that Robert's got over the line. You know, polling has showed that Robert is the candidate to unite all sides of the party, to win back those millions of voters that we lost to Reform, to win back Liberal Democrat voters. I just can't wait to get forward to working with Robert now to get members out to support him. It's going to be a long week till the ballots come out, but we're all looking forward to the challenge of getting Robert elected as the next leader of the Conservative Party.
And James, as a Welsh Conservative, you've got to be breathing a sigh of relief, because a lot of people were thinking if the party was going to go towards the centre with someone like Mr Cleverly at the helm, that could spell trouble for people like yourself in Wales, where the Reform Party are expected to make gains. But can we see the Conservative Party actually deliver on the tough talk? 14 years in power, all the promises made then, none of them were delivered.
The thing is, Robert's got the right diagnosis of how to put the party right. He understands where we went wrong. You know, the voters I speak to, you know, when I was out during the general election in the new constituency, which is Brecon, Radnor, Cwmtawi, especially in that Cwmtawi area, people didn't think that we delivered for the hard-working people of this country regard to tax, regarding jobs and everything else. But Robert has the right policies to address that. And at the Senedd election, it's going to be very, very important that we have a leader who can take the fight to Reform, that can put Reform to bed. You know, we need to be the party, unapologetically, the party that supports hard-working people, those people who pay their taxes to fund our public services, that fund the NHS, fund our education system. We need to be on their side. We're the union for the working people. They don't have no lobby group supporting them. They said, we are the party that supports the working people. And I think if we can get that message across with a strong leader in Westminster, and I severely hope that that's Robert Jenrick, because I think Robert will be first and foremost supporting us here to get Labour out of power. Robert gets Wales. I worked with him when I was a councillor. You know, I have regular conversations with him about the failings that Welsh Labour are doing, and I know he's going to raise a lot of that going forward, just, you know, what Labour have done to Wales here after 25 years in power.
James, at the start of this campaign, Robert Jenrick said he wanted to retire Nigel Farage. He wanted to make reform redundant. The big question is, has Robert Jenrick started to wear the clothes of Nigel Farage, talk like Nigel Farage, act like Nigel Farage to try and see reform off? But I put it to you again, when he was the immigration minister, when the Tory party were in power, you talked tough and all of those things then and didn't deliver. What's going to be different this time around?
Robert Jenrick is Robert Jenrick. He is not Nigel Farage. I don't think anybody could be Nigel Farage. But Robert's record in the Home Office speaks for itself. He got immigration down. Robert wanted to be tougher on immigration, on leaving the ECHR. The cabinet that was there at the time didn't want to back Robert. Robert left government because Robert is principled. Robert knew that that's what we had to do to win back voters, to regain the trust of people who didn't trust us anymore in immigration. And that's why one of the key things why I support Robert is because he's got principles. He stands up for what he believes. He left government because the cabinet wouldn't back him what he thought was right to address immigration. Now, I think Robert's got the right solutions to the problem. I said every member across the Conservative Party needs to back Robert Jenrick, because backing Robert Jenrick will get us to success in the Senate elections, the local government elections, and I believe he'll return us to power at the next general election as well.
OK, well, we had net 785,000 immigration when your man was the immigration minister. But let's forget that for one day and enjoy your champagne tonight. James Evans, thank you very much for joining us on the show.
I will get that lottery ticket.
Please do. And get me somewhere at it. Now, quickly moving on. Talk about getting lucky. It's time now for the Great British Giveaway now, the biggest cash prize we've ever given away here on GB News. £36,000 could be yours. And that's like having an extra £3,000 tax-free in your bank account each and every month for an entire year. And here's all the details that you need to try and make that cash yours.
There's an incredible demand. Good luck.
Good luck and get your entry in Robert Jenrick. Now, coming up, could Ireland be on the verge of a political revolution driven by uncontrolled immigration and a chronic housing shortage? Well, I'm about to be joined in the studio by Malachy Steenson, the man that some are comparing to Ireland's Nigel Farage. That's next. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
Mark Dolan Tonight. Weekends from 9 p.m.
Harry and Meghan haven't been pictured together for weeks now. Is there trouble in paradise?
Well, I certainly think that they are rethinking some of their past decisions. This is coming from a new piece in the Daily Mail. There is clearly a professional divorce of sorts unraveling before our eyes. And the Daily Mail says it was ultimately Harry's decision because his main objective right now is to be taken seriously in the charity space. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I believe that Harry is finally taking advice from seasoned PR experts that are saying, you know what, your wife's brand is toxic. To me, I don't think Harry would make that decision on his own. He's so stubborn. He sacrificed so much for Meghan. And I can't see him admitting defeat or admitting that he made a mistake. And in allowing PR experts to make these observations and following their direction, his hands are clean and he won't necessarily get the wrath of Meghan Markle.
Now, Harry reportedly spent his 40th birthday
away from Meghan, instead hiking with his friends.
They do say that Meghan Markle is ultimately the one that planned this trip, so maybe we are being too sensitive about this, but seeing him doing his favorite thing in the world, going to Africa, to, the Well Child Awards, I think that is more alarming.
Let's talk about Prince Andrew, who's got a headache. He's on the clock. What's going on?
Yeah, that's right. He is in jeopardy of violating the Crown Estate's lease rules, which specifically outline that repairs on Royal Lodge must be made to the property in regular intervals. Otherwise, they can terminate that lease agreement. The Express reports that the Duke has been given up until the end of the year to prove that he has the financial resources to refurbish Royal Lodge, or he's going to get the boot. He's going to be evicted.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 5:23. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, is Ireland on the verge of a political revolution driven by concerns over uncontrolled spiralling immigration, a chronic housing shortage and soaring crime? It's even sparked riots and arson attacks on asylum seeker sites, turning the Emerald Isle into a potential tinderbox. Now, one man at the sharp end of this movement is Malachy Steenson, an independent Dublin councillor, solicitor and a criminologist who became the founder of the working class Ireland is Full movement, and the man that some are even dubbing Ireland's Nigel Farage. I'm delighted to say that Malachy now joins me in the studio here in Westminster. Malachy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Martin, and thanks to GB News for actually covering this issue in a way that the Irish media refuses to do. I mean, I haven't been on any mainstream TV or radio programme in the Irish Republic since November 2022 when this all kicked off.
Isn't that astonishing in itself? But just give people a flavour here on the mainland about the political earthquake that's happened in Ireland and what's been driving it. And give us a scale, if you can, for starters, of the scale of the immigration and the political backlash.
Well, if you take Ireland 15 to 20 years ago, the population was 3.5 million. Now it's 5.5 million. We haven't done as much as build one hospital or one school in that amount of time. We have a huge housing shortage, and this is where the real pressure comes. We've 14,000 people homeless in emergency accommodation. We've many more, tens of thousands of people who are still living in their mother's box rooms who can't move out of their homes and create a life for themselves. And that brought huge pressure on the system. But the political class, to give you a small example, when we proposed building modular homes to solve our Indigenous housing problem, we were told, oh, you can't do that. Now, for Ukrainians and for asylum seekers, the government is now building modular homes, which they had costed at 220,000, which now, for some reason, which is not uncommon in Ireland, have cost 450,000 each. And that, I mean, it seems that, you know, the government asks you to provide them with something, you send them a cost, and then they just double it or treble it. And in fact, we have, you may have heard about this, there's a children's hospital being built in Dublin. Started off at less than 100 million, or it's now 2.5 billion. And even today we have heard that the contractor costed some work at 200,000, but put in a bill, and as far as I know, received it for 25 million. That just beggars belief. We've no infrastructure.
Let's talk, if we can, about the the incident that brought a lot of this to attention, and there was a riot in Dublin last November. That's precipitated, of course, by a stabbing of some children and their teacher. Vehicles were set alight. And, of course, the media, we can see pictures of that on our screen now. And, of course, Malika, the media, you'll be no surprise to you, leapt on this as evidence of a country gripped by the far right, by racism, by fascism even. We've heard all of this before. And yet, in Ireland, you seem to have a particularly hostile media. They seem to have completely fallen into line, Maliki, with the theory that immigration can only be a good thing. And as a consequence, you've seen hundreds and hundreds of peaceful protests before anything like this happened, Maliki, of people saying enough is enough, Ireland is full, and yet nobody was listened to. Why not?
Well, I suppose the initial protest began in East Wall in November 22, almost a year before the particular incident and the riots in Parnell Street. There have been 250, according to the Garda's figures, 250 protests. Almost every one of them had been peaceful. The only time that there was trouble at them was, in fact, when the left attacked protests. Yeah. And in fact, on one of our protests, they drove a car into a rally and injured a man. And, you know, if you look at what happened in Parnell Street in November 2023, almost a year ago, 3 young children were stabbed coming out of a creche or a play school. Their care worker, the girl collecting them, was stabbed. That girl will never be the same again. 2 of the children were thankfully recovered, mainly. The other child will never be the same again and will never have any quality of life. And the state's reaction to that, and the police visited some of the witnesses to that case, or that incident, and told them not to speak about it, because they would be then responsible for trouble and violence on the streets. I would say that the pent-up anger in Dublin City, which is a tinderbox at the best of times, if somebody comes along, whether they're a non-national or not, and stabs 3 kids walking down the street, there will be trouble. And I would suggest that any main city in England, Wales, Scotland, or anywhere else in Europe, the same reaction would happen.
We saw a similar reaction, of course, in Southport. Nobody is condoning riots or anything. And I know you don't. You know, this is that you've had hundreds, as you say, of peaceful protests. Let's talk now, Maliki, about the political movement. There is a movement going on. You've been elected in Dublin. We've got big elections coming up. Can the island is full? Can the working class movement that you're spearheading get seats and affect actual, real political change in Ireland?
Well, in the local elections in June, there was 3 of us elected to Dublin City Council of like mind. Before that, we didn't have anybody. We've probably a dozen councillors around the country, which is a huge breakthrough. We expect to have a general election either on the 7th or the 22nd of November. You know, and this government keeps talking about misinformation and lies. They're continually telling us we won't have an election till next year, and the dogs in the street know that there will be an election this year. We've beaten them already in June by getting a number of councillors elected. We beat them in 2 referendums earlier in the year. We got rid of Leo Varadkar, who's gone because of the groundswell of opinion against immigration, and he's replaced with a total idiot, Simon Harrison. You think your politicians are bad, you want to come over and see ours. But the problem with the political class here is that they're all indoctrinated with woke liberalism. They've all come through the universities, with the exception of Harris, I have to say. And they all think the same and speak the same. And anybody who disagrees with the orthodoxy or with what the state says you're supposed to believe is somehow far right. And, you know, I'm saying that migration is leading to a problem with housing. I'm saying that since November 2022. The Taoiseach, the Prime Minister, is now saying the same thing. So is he far right? And we do know that the blue shorts, Fine Gael, were the original fascists, and the brown shorts in Ireland when they were created. But the other problem, I mean, you talk about the riots and law and order. There is no law and order in Dublin or in any major town and city in Ireland. We have a huge drugs crisis. Now we have drug addicts fighting amongst themselves. And we have a political class and we have NGOs, 33,000 NGOs, who are anything but an NGO. They get 6.5 billion to lecture us, and the government just follows what they say, just as the opposition. People did have some faith in Provisional Sinn Féin that they would be some kind of an opposition and that they were on track to go into government. That ship has now sailed. because the people see, particularly in working class communities, people see themselves as having been abandoned by the provisionals. And indeed, one of their TDs last night on radio said that the people's mistrust of the government was because of the far right. Now, I would only hope that the far right, if they exist, would have that much influence. But the mistrust of the government is because of the government's continual lies and the government's continual rejection of the people's wishes.
OK, Malika Steenson, thank you for coming to the mainland and talking to us here at GB News. And, of course, we'll keep a close eye on all those elections as they emerge later this year. Thank you for your time, sir. Always appreciated. Thank you. Now, lots more still to come between now and 6 o'clock, and prepare to be terrified, because later in the show I'll be joined by Emma Parsons-Reid, who calls herself Britain's meanest granny. She keeps her 5 grandkids in check with a whistle and even deliberately makes them cry to stop them becoming snowflakes. I think I'm going to really, really like her. But first, here's your headlines with Katie Bowen.
Martin, thank you. Very good afternoon to you. The time has just gone 5:30. I'm Katie Bowen in the GB Newsroom. As you've been hearing, Tory MPs have now selected the final 2 candidates in the Conservative leadership election, with Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick making it through to the members' vote. Kemi Badenoch received 42 votes, Robert Jenrick picked up 41, and James Cleverly received 37, meaning he has now been eliminated from the race. Cleverly has thanked his colleagues, party members and the public for the support he received during his campaign in a tweet. Voting will open for Conservative Party members in an online ballot tomorrow, closing on the 31st of October, and you can watch the final 2 battle it out in a live event exclusively here on GB News on the 17th of October. Elsewhere in politics, Sir Keir Starmer faced questions in the House of Commons this lunchtime as Prime Minister's questions returned. The leader of the opposition, Rishi Sunak, probed Sir Keir on whether tax rises were on the horizon in the upcoming budget. The Tory leader, in one of his last PMQs, questioned the Prime Minister on if a promise not to raise taxes in the Chancellor's budget applies to national insurance contributions from both employers and employees. Here's what the Prime Minister had to say.
We made an absolute commitment in relation to not raising tax on working people. He, of course, was the expert's expert on raising taxes. And what did we get in return for it? We got a broken economy, broken public services, and a £22 billion black hole in the economy. We're here to stabilise the economy, and we will do so.
To the US, the biggest hurricane in a century is hitting Florida today, with American President Joe Biden warning it's a matter of life and death for residents. If you're watching on television, these are live pictures we're bringing you from Fort Myers in the United States. Around 1 million people living in the path of Hurricane Milton are being evacuated with concerns that lives are in danger. A short while ago, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis held a press conference where he updated residents on the measures in place for their safety.
There is high confidence that this hurricane is going to pack a major, major punch and do an awful lot of damage. The state is actively fulfilling over 1,500 missions. We've delivered massive amounts of supplies, meals, water bottles, sandbags, tarps, generators to be able to help our local communities.
Those are your latest GB News headlines for now. It's time for your finance report.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.31 and 1.19 euros. The price of gold is £2,000 and 24 pence per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 8,243 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report. For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
OK, stand by, because joining me now is Bev Turner, who is in for Jubes & Co tonight. 6 till 7, Jubes & Co. Bev, welcome to the show. What's on your menu?
Thank you, Martin. Well, we are going to be reflecting on this shock result in the Conservative leadership race. Obviously, now we've got these two final contenders, Kemi Bade, not Robert Jenrick. The party will vote on them, the party members, of course. Are they the people to take the Conservatives into the future, take the fight to Starmer? We're going to be talking about these population growth figures as well. More deaths than births in the UK for the first time. We're relying heavily on migration to keep our population afloat. Or are we just, frankly, too full? You go out on the roads anywhere in this country, it feels like there are just too many people here at the moment. We're also going to be talking, Martin, about sex education. We've got two panellists who feel very differently about what should be on the curriculum at schools. And there's a report out to say that we're letting down our kids, we're not informing them properly or telling them about the right sort of things, particularly when it comes to women's health and climate change. Is it a threat to our national security? Of course, that's how it's being sold to us now. The eco agenda, we're being told, it's not only just to save the planet, it's to keep us safe. Is that all a load of nonsense? That and a lot more between 6 and 7.
A magnificent menu, of course. COVID was going to kill us all, and now it's the climate. As ever, superb stuff coming up. Bev Turner standing in for Jubes & Co 6 till 7. Marvellous, thank you. Now, if you want to get in touch with me here at GB News, simply go to gbnews.com/you'll say loads already. I'll make sure to read out the best before the end of the show. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello again. Here's your GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. For many of us, it has been a pretty wet few days, and we are actually going to see a lot of that rain, those showers easing as we go through the next 24 hours or so. We do still have low pressure nearby, and we are still seeing some rain for the next couple of hours, but a lot of that rain's pushing its way southwards and breaking up. Most of the showers will be easing and clearing away as well as we go through this evening, with some clearer skies developing, particularly across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and later Northern England overnight. All of that happening because we have a brisk northerly wind, and that could lead to some blustery conditions for some of us. In the north, where we get those clear skies, it is going to be a chilly night. Could be a touch of frost in some places. Still a bit milder, though, towards the south. Here, it's actually going to be a bit of a damp start to the day, but further north, away from areas exposed to that northerly wind, it's largely dry across central southern Scotland with some bright sunshine, but elsewhere where we have that northerly wind, we are going to see some showers pushing through. Some showers across parts of Northern Ireland first thing, and down the eastern side of England as well. Elsewhere, many places across central northern England starting the day largely fine. A few showers for parts of Wales, and like I said, across the far south of England, a bit of a damp start. But that rain will clear away as we go through the day, and so for many, tomorrow is going to be a much drier, a much brighter day than of late. A few showers inland, but the showers will be most frequent around areas exposed to that northerly wind. And in that northerly wind, it is going to feel quite chilly. Temperatures dropping compared to how high they have been recently, 13 or 14 Celsius at best towards the south, and feeling a bit colder than that in that wind. More fine weather to come for many of us as we go through the end of the day, but still some showers in some places, particularly towards the far northwest of Scotland. A bit of a north-south split as we go towards the weekend. Always wettest towards the north. There could be some winteriness, some sleet or snow over the higher ground. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Johnny Ratner. Problems brought on by the flooding in County Durham continues to close the A1M in both directions from junction 60, the Bradbury exit to 59 at Aycliffe, and in Derbyshire on the M1 southbound, the inside lane on that 4-lane stretch closed off from junction 30 at Worksop to 29A at Bolsover, where a van has broken down, causing long queues back over the South Yorkshire border towards Sheffield, I can see on camera. On the M6 in Warwickshire, the two inside lanes of 4 are closed southbound from the Corley services to junction 3 north of Coventry for emergency repairs. On the M11 in Essex, a lane shut northbound 7A to 8 towards Stansted, where a lorry's got a puncture, and buses are in for trains between Ely and Norwich because of a level crossing problem, and South Eastern still can't run through Kent in Faversham and Ramsgate for emergency engineering works. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Welcome back. Your time is 5:41. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, the number of confirmed gas thefts across England, Wales and Scotland has rocketed by over 25% last year. Now, in most cases, gas theft involves either bypassing the gas meter, leaving the gas supply unregulated and uncharged, or even tampering with the gas meter so an incorrect amount of gas is recorded. Now, as things stand, gas fraud carries a maximum penalty of 5 years in nick or a fine of up to £2,000. This is something that really gets my goat. And now we can speak with the Chief Operating Officer at Cadent, Howard Foster. Howard, welcome to the show. I'll call you the gas man if I could. Howard, this is something that really annoys me. People move into properties, they bypass the gas. My mate Barber, Sean, they plugged into his gas with a plastic pipe, siphoning his gas off. How prevalent is this, and how are these con men getting around it?
Yeah, thanks, Martin. I mean, the first point to make is stealing gas is dangerous. It puts lives at risk. I have 5,000 engineers who sadly, on occasions, do attend properties for which tampering with the meter and bypassing the meter has resulted in a danger to people within that property, and sometimes with serious consequences, and gas getting in the building and an explosion occurring. So it's not something we ever want to see. Thankfully, it is a relatively rare activity, and if you look at the sort of broader, we have 11 million customers at the end of our network, but it is something we have seen an increase in over the last 12 months or so, as you've described.
And Howard, in terms of the methodology, what people are just like in the old days, what you put a magnet on your lecky meter to stop the wheel going around. How are people tampering with meters to siphon off gas?
Yeah, the most prevalent, I think you said it in your introduction, Martin, is actually a bypass of the meter. So it's attaching a pipe to the pipe that connects under your meter and then bypassing the meter. And obviously, the concern there is our engineers are highly experienced at undertaking activities and working on gas appliances and gas pipe work. Most people aren't, and it's what we do discover is as we attend there, you see leakage, you see poorly installed. Notwithstanding the fact it's theft and it's illegal, it's the unsafe nature in which some of those bypasses are installed, and that's where the risk occurs.
And Howard, there's no surprises. It's happening most in big cities. The hot spots, West Midlands, Birmingham, 660, Coventry, 135, 372 in London. What kind of properties are doing this? What is this, like slum landlords who are just trying to game the system? Is there a pattern to the ragbags who are doing this?
There isn't. I think we're finding it much more broad-based. There isn't anything from, as I said, it's quite small numbers. So in reality, it's a relatively broad church, Martin. The key thing, and I guess what the purpose of wanting to really send this message today, that stealing gas will put people's lives at risk, is really to ask everyone to be vigilant. It's in all towns and cities, and it is potentially in your street. So there is an opportunity to report this. There's an anonymous telephone number for which, if you believe you have observed or are aware of people tampering with the meter and or bypassing the meter, you can contact the number which is Stay Energy Safe, which is 0800 023 2777. That's an anonymous line, and we're encouraging people to contact that number if they are suspicious.
Good stuff, Howard Foster. And, you can always see those yellow pipes. It just mysteriously crop up where people are siphoning off. And, of course, if there's a squat, people are just putting cables across and nicking the electric as well. It's got to be stamped out. Thank you for your work, Howard Foster, the Chief Operating Officer at Cadent. Thank you very much. Got to turn off the supply to you now, I'm afraid. Now, coming up in just a moment, you're going to be terrified as I'll be joined by Emma Parsons-Reid, who's calling herself Britain's meanest granny. I think I'm going to like her a lot. You won't want to miss it. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Sleep Report 2024 is based on a comprehensive survey conducted all across the country, and the report found that over half the population, get this, falls short of the recommended 7+ hours of required sleep each night. And shockingly, 1 in 4 of us is getting 5 hours or less. I think that includes you, doesn't it?
Yes, I'm very bad at sleep. 4 or 5, I'd say.
That's
A bit
awful.
like Maggie Thatcher. What would you get on average?
I'd say at least 6. 7 probably average.
That's probably not good. I think you probably need 8. Well, almost half of Brits rate their sleep quality as 5 out of 10 or lower.
Dr Manesh Shah and Dr Sita Shah joins us now to tell us all about the sleep and how Brits are struggling. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
First questions to you both. How many hours do you both get?
God, I think it varies. I try and hit that 7 hours of sleep.
Why are Brits so bad at getting sleep, especially in terms of hours? 4 or 5 hours for me, 6 hours for you. It's the same for everybody out there in the UK. We're just not going to bed early enough. Is it as simple as that? Or is it slightly more complicated?
Yeah, so I think the key is to establish a good routine. So waking up at the same time every day, making sure that you're going to sleep at the same time every day, and being quite sort of rigid and strict with yourself when it comes to those timings.
And also, it's not just the length of, I get, say, 7 hours, it's the quality, isn't it? You've got different phases of sleep.
Yeah.
Just explain those. Is it, as far as I remember, REM, deep sleep? Just tell us about that.
Correct, yeah. So, essentially, there's 4 stages to sleep. So there's stage 1 and stage 2, which are your lighter stages of sleep. And then stage 3 is your deeper sleep. And then you've got the stage 4, which is your REM. Which is a rapid eye movement stage. And it's the stage 3 and the REM sleep which is really, really important for restorative and regenerative sleep.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's approaching 10 to 6. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, Emma Parsons-Reid has become known as Britain's meanest granny, and she employs a strict, no-nonsense approach to raising her 5 granddaughters. She uses novel methods like a military-style whistle system and withholds treats to enforce discipline, believing tough love prepares them for life's challenges. Now, despite even making her grandchildren cry, Emma is totally unrepentant, arguing that kids need to toughen up to avoid what's becoming, she calls, as snowflakes. Now, her approach has sparked some debate, with some applauding her discipline, while others are criticising her harsh methods. And I can now speak with Britain's meanest nan, Emma Parsons-Reid. Emma, welcome to the show. Now, I've got to say, I saw your story this morning. I think you're absolutely bang on. You're doing the right thing. A lot of people now are just too softly. Tell us your methods and tell us how it works for you.
Well, I was strictly brought up, so, there were times I didn't like that, but I appreciate now as an adult that I can hold my own in society. So I've always been able to talk to anybody of all ages. I like to think I'm very polite. Obviously, with my daughter, I was very strict with her. I was the breadwinner. So I didn't have time to mess around, really. I was out at work and then I'd come home and she was my second job. And she knows I didn't have to raise my voice with her. She knew a look was all it took. And she
I can see that look now.
Oh, yes. Yes. So obviously,
I can see that look now.
Yeah, oh yes. I hope you've been good today, Martin.
So tell us, Emma, about things like blowing whistles and making them write grammatically perfect apology letters if they mess up. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if they're rude to me, and obviously they're, especially the teenagers, they're getting to that stage where they are going to answer back. And, I'm prepared for that, but I won't speak to them. I send them to Coventry, and that's where they stay. And they know, and the older one who's 17, she is, she really fights my discipline. But I won't speak to her for weeks and weeks. And she knows, unless she sort of writes to me an apology, I will accept an email. I won't doesn't have to be pen and paper, but I expect an apology, and she knows I won't budge until I have that. So she's now passing on to the children, the younger ones, just apologise, because Noonie will do this for weeks and weeks and weeks, and you won't get a treat, you won't get taken out anywhere. I'm a very loving grandmother as well. I'm not all just horrible, otherwise they wouldn't want to see me at all. But I enjoy. Go on.
So Emma, my favourite bit. I mean, I can see why they listen to you, by the way, because I'm bristling myself. So when you blow your whistle, the thing I like about this, apparently they stand in a line. Oh, here we go. Go on, give us a blast. Go on, give us a blast.
Let's give it a pepper fry.
Yeah. Woof.
Yes.
Yeah.
Stand up, Martin. Stand up. Yes.
Oh, well,
so it's a bit like the sound
God. Right. I'll put
it's a bit like the Sound of Music, where they all line up.
Anyway, look, let's carry on. So what I'm saying is, people respond to your tough love, your 5 granddaughters, and your methods work.
They do. I can take them anywhere. They are very polite. All their teachers, from the 8-year-old up to 17, say that they're really well behaved. They know how to toe the line. And I mean, obviously with me and their parents, sometimes they'll try it on, but I am very strict. And I think parents these days, because they're working full time, they don't have time to be on it all the time. And that's where I come in, because I have the time now to discipline them and to make sure that they're not deck chairs that fold at the first sign of weight. It's a tough world out there, and they're all that we hate this, we can't cope with that, or we're having the vapors. My lot won't be like that. My lot will rule the world.
And Emma, before you go, could I ask you one final question? Are you available for hire? Can I get you to come round and sort my kids out?
Oh, yes. I think I should have my own TV programme, with my whistle, keep them all in line. Oh, yeah, I can train any child. Any child.
Excellent stuff. Thank you very, very much. A lot of people, you sparked a huge debate. I think this kind of discipline is sadly missing in Britain. I think you're absolutely right. Kids are mollycoddled, they're wrapped in cotton wool, everyone gets a rosette, everyone's told they're special. That doesn't work. Perhaps the Emma Parsons-Reid method, a bit of tough love, that's what we need. An absolute pleasure to have you on the show. You weren't at all terrifying, honest. Thank you very much, Emma. Now, that's all for today, but please don't go anywhere, because up next is Jubes & Co. Tonight, it's with Bev Turner. Full reaction to that amazing result today. James Cleverly sensationally knocked out of the Tory leadership race, leaving Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick to fight it out. Who wins? Do you care? Thanks for joining me. I'll be back tomorrow 3 till 6. Now, it's your weather, and here's Alex Burkham.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again. Here's your GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. For many of us, it has been a pretty wet few days, and we are actually going to see a lot of that rain, those showers easing as we go through the next 24 hours or so. We do still have low pressure nearby, and we are still seeing some rain for the next couple of hours, but a lot of that rain's pushing its way southwards and breaking up. Most of the showers will be easing and clearing away as well as we go through this evening, with some clearer skies developing, particularly across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and later Northern England overnight. All of that happening because we have a brisk northerly wind, and that could lead to some blustery conditions for some of us. In the north, where we get those clear skies, it is going to be a chilly night. Could be a touch of frost in some places. Still a bit milder, though, towards the south. Here, it's actually going to be a bit of a damp start to the day, but further north, away from areas exposed to that northerly wind, it's largely dry across central southern Scotland with some bright sunshine, but elsewhere where we have that northerly wind, we are going to see some showers pushing through.